How you guys all doing today? Glad you're here. Oh, gotta get it on tune, gotta get it on key, right? Always good. We're streaming today, we're streaming away. I hope you're doing fine. There's so many streams for us to see, but this one here is mine. I hope that you're happy, I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me, watch the world go to hell as we are streaming away. We're streaming today. Let's stream today. Good evening to you, Misty. Glad you're here. Kind of in the mood just to play a little bit. That's the beauty of having a stream, right? You can just kind of do what you want. And everybody, you know, they'll either take the journey with you or they won't. Hey, Crouching, how you doing today, bud? We got a beautiful shot here of Ontario. I'm in a really, peaceful sort of a mood today. Had a really lovely conversation with my dad. He's out in Manitoba. They're actually experiencing a good amount of rain at the moment, which is good for Manitoba, man. They've been going through a real drought. So it's nice that we have rain coming in. Hopefully it's going to help the farmers out, help them grow their crops. Because that's what we need, man, more than anything. Wouldn't that be great if I just played the whole time? The whole stream is just me playing on the guitar. Very unlikely, very unlikely. I hope you guys are doing well out there in the world. So let us begin. As always, Mr. David Lynch with his daily update.
Good morning. It's August 24, 2021, and it's a Tuesday. Here in LA, a clear morning, very still right now, 61 degrees Fahrenheit, around 16 Celsius. Today, I was thinking about the fact that Don Everly passed away a few days ago, and that was the end of the Everly Brothers. Made me start thinking about all their songs, how great they were, and I guess I started thinking about their first hit record, Bye Bye Love. This afternoon it'll be going up to 81 degrees Fahrenheit, around 27 Celsius, and it looks like we're going to be having blue skies and golden sunshine all along the way.
All along the way.
Everyone, have a great day.
And of course, right back at you, Mr. Lynch. Here are the Everly Brothers. Couple of tunes of theirs.
Straight from Nashville, Tennessee, here are the boys who rock the nation's jukeboxes with Bye Bye Love and Wake Up Little Susie, the Everly Brothers. Come on!
Wake up, little Susie, wake up. Wake up, little Susie, wake up. We both been sound asleep. Wake up, little Susie, and weep. The movie's over, it's 4 o'clock and we're in trouble. Deep. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. Well, what are we gonna tell your mama? What are we gonna tell your mama? What are we gonna tell our friends when they say, ooh la la, wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. Should we tell him to let him go out trusting isn't fair? Should we tell him? Should we tell him that his girl doesn't care? I took my best food action down to my best friend's man.
This guy's hair, right?
He made a
Don't you love it?
so big glass before the dance was over, I saw him fall her over. Then he whispered, thought I didn't hear. Should we tell him to let him go on trusting him there? Should we tell him? Should we tell him that his girl doesn't care? I left them there together, thought that I might feel better down at this cafe where we used to go. Found all my friends together, just for some fun and laughter. Then I heard two of them talking low. Should we tell him to let him go on trusting isn't fair? Should we tell him? Should we tell him that his girl doesn't care?
And so with that, we say farewell to the Everly brothers. Don Everly just passed away a couple of days ago, and I think that's having reverberations throughout the community. Someone like David Lynch, right? David Lynch is getting up there himself. You know, it's got to make a man think. So, we got our numbers. We got a 3, we got a 7, and a 4. I'm going to go 6.
Here we go
That's what
for
I'm
today's
feeling.
number.
I'm feeling a 6.
It's August 24,
I love this hat.
2021.
Just what's with the hat?
10
David?
balls.
I love it.
Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the number.
Roll the numbers.
Pick a number.
Here we go. Here it comes. It's going to be a 6.
Today's number is
2.
2.
2. Boo. Well, tune in tomorrow. What will tomorrow's number be? All right. So today, honestly, when I talk about slow news days, these last few days have just been slow. Nothing. Literally nothing. So, we're digging deep into the Canadian dimension, the urgent need to tax billionaires out of existence. A wealth tax would raise badly needed revenue. Most importantly, it could reduce the fortunes and powers of billionaires. If you guys know me, right? I say it over and over again. The reason why you need to get rid of billionaires from your society is because even a single billionaire will readjust itself and readjust the society to cater to the whims of that billionaire. That a politician isn't going to say no to a billionaire, right? That all a politician has to do, or all a billionaire has to do, rather, to get a politician in his pocket is invite him to his mansion, right? You throw a party, you get the politician to come over to your place with all of the other politicians and all of the other people, right? You have them live this billionaire life, and at the end of the night, you just say, I look forward to working with you, right? You don't need to bribe them. You don't need to actively, like, open up a suitcase full of gold or anything, right? You just need to exist as a billionaire. Oh, you think they gained 37 billion during this whole pandemic? Try more like 4 trillion, dude. Like, the amount of money that the billionaire class has gained. How much money has the billionaire class made during COVID? That's up 35%. So, in other words, this is from Forbes. The U.S. billionaires have gotten about $1.2 trillion richer during the pandemic. How much money has the... Let's see what Canadian... 78 billion. So, almost 3 times the amount that you were saying, Crouching. So, like, this 37 billion that you're seeing, that comes from about a year ago, September 17th, right? Yeah. 1 year later, Canadian billionaire wealth up by 78 billion. The $37 billion mark, that's old news. That's about a year old, that news, right? From April 14th, 78 billion. So 3 times more than you think. Right? Like, so this comes from Linda McQuaig and Neil Brooks in Canadian Dimension. I've been really enjoying Canadian Dimension as a source. So, here we go. In 2008, just after the election of Barack Obama, the two of us were trying to peddle an idea for a book decrying the rise of billionaires. A New York publisher told us he loved our proposal, but it came too late. With Obama's election, he said the super rich would soon be hit by steep taxes that would start depleting their fortunes. Their day in the sun was done. The publisher apparently wasn't acquainted with the first law of taxes, that the rich will fight a tax increase as fiercely and ruthlessly as Donald Trump will fight an election loss. The only difference is that the rich don't settle for clown shows. They hire top lawyers and win. And so they have, to the detriment of all of us. One of the most profound changes over the past 40 years has been the ever-increasing concentration of wealth in the hands of a tiny number of individuals who control an ever-rising percentage of the world's limited resources. As their share of the world's wealth has risen to incomprehensible levels, so too has their power over us, effectively nullifying democracy and threatening the very livability of the planet. This increasing dominance of billionaires, and how it renders us powerless to protect ourselves in the most basic ways, should be front and center in the current federal election campaign. Instead, it's barely even identified as an issue. The New Democratic Party, alone among our federal political parties, has called for an annual net wealth tax, which would apply exclusively to people with assets worth $10 million or more. Such a tax could raise $10 billion a year, thereby helping to fund social programs and making our tax system fairer. Those are both very important goals, but there's another even more compelling reason for a wealth tax: to prevent wealthy interests from becoming so powerful they effectively have veto power over the will of the people. The point is easily illustrated by the crucial issue of climate change. A majority of Canadians now consider global warming an emergency requiring serious action. But the colossally rich and powerful fossil fuel industry opposes such action. Hence, Justin Trudeau talks earnestly about tackling climate change, but his government doesn't do what's necessary to actually reduce emissions. In fact, it spends billions of dollars buying and expanding the Trans Mountain Pipeline, so the fossil fuel industry can increase its output from the oil sands. As a result, Canada's emissions continue to grow, depriving Canadians of the opportunity to protect ourselves against a harrowing future of intense heat, fires, droughts, and floods. The notion that billionaires effectively control key aspects of the political agenda in ways that profoundly affect our lives and our futures would be repulsive to most Canadians. However, the political domination of the super-rich is a reality, even if it's rarely discussed or even acknowledged in the mainstream media. And it's the elephant in the room of our current election campaign, where there's some discussion of climate change and other looming environmental disasters, but almost no discussion of what's blocking action on these vital fronts. Although the dominance of billionaires greatly limits our political options, it's a subject that is almost entirely missing from the election campaign. This is partially because the billionaire class exerts its political influence in ways that are hard to see. The super-rich don't have one single lever that gives them political influence. Rather, their influence is pervasive and often invisible. Their enormous wealth enables them to disproportionately influence virtually every variable that determines political outcomes. Here's just a partial list of how they influence politics. Their control over investments that create jobs ensures them a privileged position in negotiating with government. Their control with the major institutions through which the public's opinions are formed and mediated, such as policy planning organizations, think tanks, and trade and industrial organizations. Their ownership of the mass media, which most citizens depend on for information and analysis about public policies, and which overwhelmingly reflect the interest of business and the wealthy. Their hiring of an army of PR consultants to mislead the public about their intentions, and lobbyists to influence legislative results. Their ability to hold out the promise of high-paying jobs in their companies and on their boards to politicians and civil servants who further their agenda while in office, and their personal access through social connections to politicians so that political leaders are always acutely aware of their views and concerns, a form of cognitive capture. We didn't even mention the most obvious method of influence, financial contributions to political campaigns, because such contributions are well known and public, and are at least partially governed by rules. But as the list shows above, there are so many other less visible but highly effective ways that super-rich people influence political decision-making. It would be possible to try and cut off some of these avenues of influence through regulation, but the task of devising meaningful rules with sufficient teeth would be mammoth, and any new rules would almost certainly be blocked or whittled down by lobbyists. The only way to reduce the influence of the billionaires is to get to the root of the problem, by reducing their wealth. The sheer amount of wealth now owned by billionaires is so staggering it defies imagination. Just 8 men own more wealth than half of the world's population, over 3.5 billion people. As Oxfam reported a couple of years ago, such wealth juxtapositions between billionaires and the rest of the world get more out of control and obscene all the time. And yet we're supposed to believe that nothing needs to be done about it. Will it still be okay when 2 or 3 men own virtually all of the wealth in the world, in addition to controlling outer space? Forbes, the American business magazine, started publishing an annual list of the world's billionaires in 1987. In that year, the magazine counted 140 billionaires worldwide with an estimated total worth of $295 billion American dollars. 35 years later, in 2021, it counted 2,755 billionaires around the world worth a staggering $13.1 trillion, an amount equal to 15% of global gross domestic product. And in this era, when the B word is tossed around freely, let's not forget how many dollars it actually takes to make a billion. If you were to receive $1 every second, 24 hours a day, it would take you 12 days to become a millionaire. But to become a billionaire, you'd have to keep up that pace, receiving $1 every second, 24 hours a day, for a staggering 32 years. And of course, a mere unibillionaire barely turns heads on a beach anymore. The wealthiest billionaires, like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, now have more than 180 billion each. To be in that league, you'd have to have received $1 every second, 24 hours a day, for more than 5,000 years, since the early part of the Bronze Age, not that long after humans lived in caves. Fast forward to the current pandemic, when so many people have lost their jobs or suffered debilitating illness, yet the wealth of billionaires has risen to stupefying heights. Worldwide, billionaire wealth rose by 5 trillion to 13.1 trillion over a 12-month period, by far the most dramatic increase in recorded history. The wealth of Canada's top 44 billionaires surged by more than 50 billion during the pandemic. The very wealthiest, David Thompson, increased his holdings by almost 25 billion. Meanwhile, over the same time period, the average Canadian worker earned a salary of about 70,000, if they were fortunate enough to retain a job. David Thompson's income during the pandemic was 342,000 times greater than what the average Canadian earned over the same period. Did Thompson, who inherited control of his media empire, work 342,000 times as hard as the average Canadian? Is he 342,000 times smarter? Did he make sacrifices that were 342,000 times greater? What conceivable principle of distributive justice, or any kind of justice, could possibly justify such a gap? In fact, there are still some commentators trying to make the case that such enormous hoarding of resources is justified. We maintain, on the contrary, that the immense concentration of wealth and income today is not due to economic imperatives, but to political decisions. That no economic or other purpose is served by allowing a small group of individuals to capture a grotesquely disproportionate share of national wealth. That those who have been able to accumulate these obscene amounts have no moral claim to their gigantic fortunes, that the super rich are not uniquely talented wealth creators, but instead most are mostly greedy and ruthless manipulators who, through sheer luck, monopoly power, the opportunity to exploit accumulated knowledge, and often outright dishonesty, have managed to position themselves to capture the resources that should belong to others. That allowing a growing concentration of income and wealth among the ultra-rich has significant social, political, and economic costs. That there is no conflict between reducing this concentration of wealth and increasing the prosperity of everyone else. And that the tax system is an appropriate and necessary policy instrument for reducing this ridiculously large gap between the ultra-rich and everyone else. The tax system at present does nothing to prevent the accumulation of vast wealth. The inadequacy of the income tax for making the ultra-rich pay their fair share was starkly revealed earlier this year, and in a report published by ProPublica, an American investigative news organization. Based on income tax returns provided by an anonymous source, the report revealed in detail that the wealthiest Americans paid little or no tax, even while their wealth continued to grow at an astounding rate. The report compared how much tax the 25 richest Americans paid each year from 2014 to 2018, to how much Forbes estimated their wealth grew over the same period. In some of those years, while their wealth was doubling and tripling, Jeff Bezos, Michael Bloomberg, Carl Icahn, George Soros, Warren Buffett, and Elon Musk, among the wealthiest men in the world, paid no income tax at all. The main reason billionaires pay so little income tax is that their income is largely in the form of the appreciating value of their assets, particularly corporate stocks. As long as they don't sell those shares, their rise in value is not taxed under the income tax. Hence, billionaires can borrow against the appreciating value of their stock to finance their lavish lifestyles and defer paying income tax until the stock is sold. In Canada, payment can be deferred until death, at which point the stock is deemed to have been sold. And even when the stock is sold, the gains are taxed at only half the normal rates. Indeed, the concept of taxable income is almost irrelevant for billionaires. While almost all amounts received by working people count as taxable income, billionaires make their fortune through growth in the value of their assets, and that does not count as income under the income tax. Even if the income tax rate were increased to 100%, it would have little effect on the accumulation of their wealth. Hence, the only way to tax billionaires effectively is to tax their wealth directly through an annual net wealth tax. The ProPublica report dealt with American billionaires, but since the basic Canadian income tax rules are the same as those in the US, there is little doubt that an examination of the tax returns of Canadian billionaires would reveal that their income tax is a tiny percentage of their increasing wealth each year, leaving them largely untaxed. In Canada, the Trudeau Liberals have insisted that they want to increase taxes on the wealthy. The mandate letter to Chrystia Freeland when she took over as finance minister called on her to identify additional ways to tax extreme wealth inequality. Apparently following through on that, Freeland's 2021 budget proposed a 10% luxury tax on new cars and aircraft costing more than $100,000, and new boats costing more than $25,000. As the budget noted, even as Canadians have sacrificed to keep our economy going through the pandemic, some of the wealthiest have done well. True, Canada's billionaires are richer by $50 billion. So making David Thompson pay a few $1,000s more for a yacht or a private jet should even things up, right? The current interest in wealth taxes really got started with the 2019 Democratic presidential campaigns of U.S. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Warren proposed a 2% tax on individuals' net worth in excess of $50 million and a 6% rate above $1 billion. Sanders proposed a more aggressive and progressive tax, starting at 1% on net wealth above $32 million, rising to a marginal rate of 8% on net wealth above $10 billion. With progressive rates, a wealth tax could limit the growth of large fortunes, even reducing them in size. This is what the tax is supposed to do. Stop the rich from accumulating even bigger fortunes and wielding ever more power over the rest of us. As the great U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis noticed, we can have democracy in this country, or we can have great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. The wealth tax also entered Canadian politics in 2019. During that year's federal election campaign, when the New Democrats promised an annual tax of 1% on net wealth of more than $20 million. The NDP proposal was so timid compared to the proposals of Senators Warren and Sanders. The NDP's tax started at a lower threshold, but had no ramp-up in rates, even for billionaires. It would raise billions of dollars in revenue, but it would do little to reduce wealth concentration. Indeed, to actually slow or reduce the size of large fortunes, a wealth tax would have had to have higher rates than even those proposed by Sanders or Warren. The renowned French economist Thomas Piketty has argued for bold rates rising as high as 90% on billionaires, thereby taxing billionaires out of existence. Yet even the NDP's gentle 1% tax on wealth was too radical for Canadian politics. When the NDP introduced a motion in Parliament last November calling for a wealth tax, Only members of the NDP and Green Party voted for it. Finance Minister Freeland, no doubt keenly searching for additional ways to tax extreme wealth inequality, somehow failed to notice this obvious way. In the current election campaign, the NDP has dropped the threshold for its wealth tax so that the 1% levy applies to all households with assets exceeding 10 million. This lower threshold means the tax would hit 87,000 wealthy households, rather than just 13,800 even wealthier ones, and raise an estimated 10 billion a year. A net annual wealth tax is, just as it sounds, a tax levied annually on the value of a taxpayer's wealth. It would include bank deposits, stocks and bonds, housing and real estate, assets in insurance, pension plans and trusts, business assets, personal assets such as artwork, boats, and airplanes. Any liabilities, such as mortgages and loans, would be deducted from the total value of assets to arrive at the taxpayer's net wealth. Both in Canada and the United States, the idea of a wealth tax has sparked predictably fierce responses from billionaires, their supporters, their business interests, the right-wing think tanks they support, and the newspapers they own. In response to Senator Warren's proposal, a former Goldman Sachs executive thoughtfully exclaimed, "This is the fucking American dream she is shitting on." The wealthy have a long history of concocting fatuous arguments about why they shouldn't face higher taxes. Here's a list of the most common ones currently being trotted out against an annual net wealth tax. Taxing wealth is unpopular. Despite the biased slant of mainstream Canadian media outlets, public opinion polls show strong and rising support among Canadians for a wealth tax. In a recent poll, Abacus Data found an astounding 89% of Canadians supported a 1% annual tax on wealth above 20 million. Surely among the highest approval ratings for a public policy proposed in Canada. Support was spread among demographic groups, provinces, and political party supporters. For example, 83% of those intending to vote Conservative supported the idea, as did 91% of Liberal supporters, 93% of NDP supporters, 96% of Bloc Québécois supporters, and 95% of Green Party supporters. An annual net wealth tax is foreign to the Canadian tax system. In fact, Canada has an annual wealth tax. It's called the property tax. This regressive tax is imposed on almost all the wealth held by low and middle income Canadians, namely on the value of their only substantial asset, their homes. A comprehensive net wealth tax would simply extend the property tax logically to all forms of property, including that held primarily by the wealthiest, such as stocks and bonds. If middle-income Canadians can pay an annual tax on the value of all their wealth, surely the wealthiest Canadians can as well. A wealth tax has not worked in countries that have adopted it. In 1990, 12 European countries had annual wealth taxes. Now only 3 do. Although various reasons have been offered to explain the repeal of European wealth taxes, analysts agreed the taxes were badly designed. They had countless exemptions that were difficult to remove because of the political influence of those who benefited from them. They had relatively low thresholds, and thus fell on mainly merely rich families, contributing to their unpopularity and the difficulty of administrating them. Wealthy individuals could avoid them by migrating out of the country or evade them by placing wealth in secrecy jurisdictions. The current crop of wealth taxes are designed to avoid these earlier problems. Most importantly, they have high exemption levels, thereby ensuring they only fall on the wealthiest individuals, and the taxes would apply to a comprehensive list of their assets. Hence, they would be much easier to administer and enforce. Moreover, wealth inequality has grown dramatically since the 1990s, as has public awareness and desire for action on the issue. a tax on the wealth would amount to double taxation. Since fortunes may consist of money that was originally earned and therefore subject to income tax, critics argue that a wealth tax will unfairly tax this money a second time. In fact, only a minuscule part of the richest family's wealth has been subject to income tax. Almost all their wealth is due to the appreciating value of assets that is not taxed under the income tax until sold, and then at very discounted rates. Moreover, double tax in this sense is common throughout the tax system. The same might be said about the tax paid on consumption, such as the HST and the tax on cigarettes, and of course, the existing property tax. The various taxes are designed to serve different purposes, and thus double taxation is not a valid argument against them. In particular, one of the purposes of a net annual wealth tax is to reduce the concentration of wealth. No other tax does or can serve this purpose. The value of the assets is too difficult to determine. A large percentage of the assets of the wealthy are stocks and bonds that are traded daily, and for which there is an easily determined market value. For assets such as privately held businesses, valuation could be determined by a formula based on profits, adjusted book values, and sales, and only be required periodically instead of annually. Many non-traded assets held by the wealthy, such as artwork and jewelry, are frequently valued for purposes of insurance or security on loans. It has been suggested that to ensure owners are self-reporting the true value of their assets, the government, or any private bidder, could be given the option of acquiring the assets at the reported value plus a surcharge of, say, 30%. Some wealthy taxpayers have low incomes and thus might not have the cash to pay the tax. First, it is frankly hard to imagine that wealthy people would not have enough cash to pay a tax equal to a small percentage of the value of their assets. Indeed, if wealthy individuals have little cash, it's likely because they've organized their affairs to realize little income. For example, by allowing their capital gains to accrue in order to avoid the income tax. That is to say, they have arranged their own illiquidity. There's a simple solution. If wealthy individuals lack enough cash to pay the tax, they can borrow the required money from a bank. Besides, wealthy people always have the option of selling some of their assets to cover the cost of the tax. It's worth noting that little concern is paid to this problem when the assets of ordinary people are considered. When workers lose their jobs and have exhausted their employment insurance benefits before they can qualify for some form of social assistance, they must value their assets, except their homes, and systematically liquidate them until they only have assets valued at less than 1 month's entitlement to general welfare assistance. The ultra-rich will find ways to evade the tax. Tax laws that permit widespread tax evasion by the rich are not laws of nature. They reflect policy choices made by legislators. Particularly with the computer advances in recent years, stopping tax evasion is technically easy, and therefore simply a matter of political will. Recently enacted international finance laws have made hiding wealth offshores much more difficult. Canada could help by establishing a national wealth registry, which would require banks and financial institutions to report all financial assets they hold on behalf of their customers. And Ottawa could give more resources to the Canada Revenue Agency so that it could conduct more audits of the wealthy. The audits would more than pay for themselves. Finally, Canada could clamp down on the super-rich hiding assets from tax authorities by imposing and enforcing draconian penalties, including imprisonment. The ultra-rich will avoid the tax by moving out of the country. A wealth tax would be much harder to avoid than the income tax. The tax is straightforward, with all the taxpayers' wealth simply valued at the end of the tax year. Besides, wealthy individuals, like everyone else who grows up in Canada, typically have family, community connections, and other strong associations to the country that make them reluctant to move. The evidence suggests that migration responses to all form of taxation are small. Besides, If some billionaires leave as the result of a wealth tax, so what? The tax would discourage savings and entrepreneurship. Does anyone seriously believe that people would cease their entrepreneurial activities if they could only dream of receiving hundreds of millions of dollars instead of billions of dollars? Is an entrepreneur even thinking about a possible future tax while trying to come up with an effective innovation? Moreover, the revenue raised from such a tax could be used to finance public investments that are essential to economic growth, such as education, scientific research, and infrastructure. The rich tend to spend their money on luxury homes and yachts, rather than on productive investments like building roads, starting community colleges, or conducting basic research. To tax the wealthy instead of introducing a new wealth tax, simply reform the income tax rules that apply to income from capital. The fortunes of the wealthiest taxpayers are mostly accumulated through the appreciating value of their assets, most often through the ownership of corporations that do not pay dividends. Income tax rules that would treat this appreciating value as income each year would be complex and politically difficult to enact, since they would apply to all taxpayers. An annual net wealth tax is a much more feasible way of increasing tax exclusively on the ultra-rich. Moreover, a wealth tax, since it taxes a taxpayer's wealth regardless of the rate of return, encourages entrepreneurs to invest where they think they can generate the highest return. Compared to the income tax, it shifts taxes from productive to unproductive entrepreneurs. Also, to the extent a wealth tax falls on the owners of large businesses that have attained a dominant position in their industries, it would help other smaller players and therefore encourage more competition and innovation. Contrary to popular lore, the super rich are not uniquely talented individuals deserving of enormous rewards. They became rich, in most cases, because of brute luck, because they were born into the right family, or because they were able to capitalize on socially created opportunities. Most of them do work of marginally social value, or often work that is actually destructive to society and the environment. To the extent that their contributions benefit the world, countless other individuals could undoubtedly make similar or better contributions if they were given more opportunities to develop their skills and ideas. As usual, Noam Chomsky captured the essence of the situation. One might speculate, rather plausibly, that wealth and power tend to accrue to those who are ruthless, cunning, avaricious, self-seeking, lacking in sympathy and compassion, subservient to authority, willing to abandon principle for material gain, and so on. Linda McQuaig and Neil Brooks are authors of The Trouble with Billionaires, published by Penguin Books Canada 2010 and later in the United States and the United Kingdom. Neil Brooks is a professor emeritus of tax policy at Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto. Linda McQuaig is a journalist and author, most recently of The Sport and Prey of Capitalists. I love doing that, man. I love reading articles, especially ones that are well written and researched and argued and brilliant. Like this is it. Like any of these fucking facetious bullshit arguments that come out about like, oh, well, the wealthy will just do this. Like, get fucked. Get fucked. Get fucked. Everybody who's defending billionaires should get fucked. Everybody who's defending billionaires should get fucked. I got a puppy here, he wants to play with his toy. Hey Milo. Hey Milo. Brrr, bump. I hit him with the toy. Amazing. Like, the existence of a billionaire class in the society at all, just the existence of a billionaire, is extremely dangerous, right? And this is true even if you imagine that they are benevolent or attempting to do good, right? Even if you believe that the billionaire is sitting there being like, and with my billions of dollars I will build a society of excellence in which all people can thrive and all things will be distributed into the world, right? Well, as the society reconfigures itself to meet the demands of even this benevolent overlord, right? People get thrown out of the system because to accrue the wealth, you need to accrue poverty. You must do this or you don't have the wealth. That for every $1 billion that somebody has, that's $1 billion that doesn't exist in the system. That you require homeless people. You require desperate people. You require people living in poverty. You require people who are desperate for work. These are requirements of having a single billionaire. And instead of manically chasing after the whims of this billionaire, who only ever will pursue objectives that continue to enrich them, they'll never pursue objectives to improve society if it doesn't also enrich them, which is why we can't get high-speed rail in the country. Forget about all the social stuff, right? Basic infrastructure is not happening in our society because it doesn't benefit these sociopathic billionaires. It is that simple that we can't upgrade our infrastructure, we can't build infrastructure, we can't create a better society, and if we can't do that, like that's the most basic shit a government does, right? Pipes, power lines, highways, rail. If your society, if your government is not upkeeping and building those things, your government is a failure. Complete, total failure. And for the last 40 years, we've built fucking nothing. We've built no power lines. We've built no highways. We've built fucking nothing. You can take a look at what happened here in the city of Toronto. Throughout the 40s to the 70s, we built the subway system we currently have is essentially the subway system we have. And we built it through that period of time and then stopped. We built like a little tiny rail over here and a little tiny rail over there. If we built at the same pace that we built over that period of time, our subway system would be twice the size it is today. But we stopped. And why? Because building the subway system doesn't help billionaires. It doesn't enrich billionaires. And in fact, billionaires do everything they can to stop these projects from happening. How do they do that? Well, if they find out that the government is planning a line from here to here, a relief line, let's say, something to actually improve the system, something that the populace actually wants and would actually benefit from, well, the capitalists buy a key piece of land and then quadruple, triple, put 10 times the value of the price because they know the government has to buy it. And because they're the ones bribing the politicians, because they're the ones who are paying for the politicians, they set the price and the politicians just cross their eyes and go, oh, I guess there's nothing we can do about it. When literally the government could be like, fuck off, that land is the government's, get out of here. Right? So billionaires are extraordinarily dangerous simply by their existence. We should get rid of them. We can get rid of them. We know how to get rid of them. It would be easy to do. It would be easy to do. Once we cut through all the bullshit, once we see these fucking stupid A Bug's Life crickets for what they are, right? Once we realize how powerless and pathetic they actually are, once we all stand up like a group of ants, once we realize that 92% of Canadians want it, 92% of Canadians want it, 92% of Canadians want it, we can do it. We just need to stop being so fucking gullible. We just need to stop being so fucking stupid about it. But we're very stupid. We're very gullible as Canadians. Like, we're very, 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 very gullible. And the idea, and you can see it in the questions, right? A tax would discourage savings and entrepreneurship. That's the most gullible shit I've ever heard in my life, right? Like, The ultra-rich will avoid tax by moving out of the country. That's just like the most gullible shit ever. Like, so, then leave. Get out of here. Sell all your assets, disconnect all your companies, pull your kids out of the school that they're in, right? Say bye-bye to your friends and family, get the fuck out of the country. You got to be a gullible rube if you're walking around believing that that's going to happen. And even if they do, bye, I'll pack your bags for you. That's like threatening, like, well, if you're going to take medicine, then the parasite will leave. Great. How is that bad? How is it bad? You're like conservatives do this all the time. They threaten us with a good time, right? Well, if you're going to remove student loan debt, what's next? Paying for people's education? Yeah. Like, yeah, you dumb fucking moron. Obviously. Like, I want to live in a good society. I want to live in a society that's actually good, right? Not this facade of nonsense, right? Our society is the equivalent of when somebody asks how you're doing and you say fine, right? That's our society in a nutshell. We're all just walking around saying fine when really our brains are on fire, our backs are aching, right? Our whole savings are getting wiped out, our whole future is being absolutely destroyed, and we're all just walking around going, oh yeah, I'm fine, right? That's our entire fucking society. It's a pretend society that doesn't really exist. It's just a fabrication. Just a lie we tell one another. Canada is a business. It's not a fucking society. Canada is a fucking business. And we sell ourselves to that business every single day in a process called wage slavery, while looking at one another going like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Telling each other this polite lie so that we can just buckle down, bend our heads down, and grind into it. And we should quit it. We should actually say, hey, this is not fine. This is a fake society, right? This isn't a society. It's a business. This fake society needs to go the fuck away, and we need a real society. And the first step of building a real society is actually saying, I give a shit about the people around me. I give a shit about that person. I don't want people working their asses off for people they'll never meet so that fucking Jeff Bezos can shoot himself into space. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? That's embarrassing. That's fucking embarrassing. Like, how about ensuring that everyone has food and shelter, right? Just guaranteeing that everyone has food and shelter, that's just taken care of. We don't even need to worry about it. That if it is something that we do need to worry about, that it's something that everybody is simultaneously worrying about, right? Instead, we're letting like 66,000 homes just sit empty here in Toronto, while our leaders walk around going, yeah, we'll build more affordable units. That'll really solve things, as the billionaire class keeps just gobbling up more and more houses. So they'll build all the houses and the billionaires will buy them. What do you fucking think is going to happen? Like, what do you fucking think is going to happen? And we're just walking around acting like goddamned children about it. It's time for Canadians to grow the fuck up and realize that you don't live in a society. You live in a business that's put a little PR team in front of you so that you can just go, yeah, I'm fine. When, no, you're not. No, you're not. You've been abandoned by a business class who doesn't give a shit if you die in the streets. And if you get too comfortable on the streets, they'll take the police and they'll send them to where you are and beat you up and throw you out of the city, like they did here in Toronto. Grow up. Grow up. And part of growing up is saying, yeah, I would like to live in a society, and part of living in a society is saying intrinsically, I care about the people around me. I want them to have food, I want them to have shelter, and no, I don't think they need to work for it. No, I don't think they need to pay for it. No, I don't think that they need to justify themselves and their existence to a group of sociopaths who are working as hard as they can to abandon us. These should be basic. It should be built in. I think to think otherwise is demonic. That you live in a system that demands you have food and shelter, and we do everything we can to withhold it. The people that are doing this and justifying that system are demons and need to be called so. fucking sociopathic losers who, if they're threatening to leave the society, good. Goodbye. Farewell. We don't need sociopathic evil devils living in our society. Get the fuck out of here. Go to Maui or whatever. Infect some other place. Go away. Happy to see you go. I'll pack your fucking bags. Well, please be sure to like, share, subscribe. Do actually genuinely consider donating $1, okay, guys? This is something like, I hate doing this. I hate pitching this. I hate that I've got to do capitalism. I hate it. I hate that I have rent to pay. I hate that I got to buy food, right? I hate that my food and shelter is withheld from me, and I hate that I've got to subserviate myself to anybody. And most of all, I hate that I've got to pitch at you guys. Please genuinely do consider donating $1 to my Patreon. Even $1 helps. I got fucking bills to pay just like everybody else. And it sucks, and I don't like it. And I don't like that I've got to sit here and ask you guys, who I think are wonderful people, coming in here, fighting the good fight, trying to organize, trying to figure stuff out. And I know some of you people are sitting on disability. I know that people in here are poor. I know that there are people, I've got people literally who are telling me they are going to be thrown out onto the streets in a few months' time. They have the timeline. They know it's going to happen, and they're still giving me $1. And I can't even believe how blessed I am to have those people who believe in me that much, who believe in this channel that much, that they're going to throw $1 my way while they know they're going to get thrown out onto the fucking streets, while this fucking business that we call a society actively fucking abandons them. And I gotta sit here and ask those people for $1? And you gotta fucking go and pitch yourself at these fucking sociopaths who are actively abandoning people to the streets? These billionaires need to go. They need to go the fuck away. They are demons and parasites that have saddled themselves onto the side of our society. And when we stand up and say, hey, can we have food and shelter, they call us lazy. They denigrate us, they insult us, they belittle us, while we make their money for them. Fuck. And in the meantime, we're walking into this fucking election, and the conservatives are outflanking the liberals on the left. That's the funniest thing, eh? To see how pathetic these liberals ended up being. To just see how useless and pedantic and worthless these liberals ended up being. Isn't that the best part? Like, fucking... Hold on. I've got articles for this. Look, here's a new poll that's coming out of Main Street Research, right? This new poll has the Liberals losing 20 seats, has the Conservatives picking up 14, has the NDP picking up 10, right? Like, this is a fucking catastrophe for these dumbass Liberals. Ugh. Okay. You guys have been saying a lot, and I gotta start responding to you guys. I'm sorry, I went on a real tirade there. I doubt the wealth tax will come to fruition, let's hope. Well, vote NDP, dude. Vote NDP. It's like their #1 promise. And it's easy to do. Like, that's the thing about it, is it's easy to do. It's not hard. It literally is like a one-pager, right? You literally need to write on a piece of paper. You could literally take a red crayon and write on a piece of like yellow parchment paper, raise tax on wealth by X%. I think wealth over $10 million should be set at 100%. Fuck this bullshit. Fuck this bullshit. I think if you want more than $10 million, you're suffering from a mental illness. Get the fuck out of here. I think that if you're legitimately sitting there trying to tell me that a person should have more than $10 million in a genuine society, not this fucking false society, this fake business we have, get the fuck out of here. Straight up, hard line, no, you have a mental illness. Go talk to a doctor. What's this fucking grotesque greed mental illness that you're suffering from? Here, let's take the wealth from the billionaire class and fund mental illness programs so that the people who are complaining that they can't enslave the population and get billions of dollars for themselves can go talk to a fucking doctor and get medicated for the obvious mental illness that they're obviously suffering from. Why are we letting these grifters and con men and fucking delusional psychopaths take our society over? Oh, right, because it's not a society, it's a fucking business. Right? It's just a fucking business. I want to live in a society. I don't give a fuck about this business. Yeah, but John, Jeff Bezos is a job creator. Some bootlicking a-hole. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, how fucking dumb are you to actually believe it when a billionaire says he's a job creator? No, asshole. Customers are job creators, right? I don't care how rich you are. If you have a business and no customers want to come in, you're not going to hire anybody, right? Customers are job creators. This is why the whole argument against raising the minimum wage falls apart completely. Oh, if you raise the minimum wage, then I won't be able to stay in business, except all my customers will also have more money, right? All your customers will have more money because you raised the fucking minimum wage. And unless your business sucks, which it might because you're a capitalist, but if your business is worth a goddamn, if you're actually offering something that people want, well, more people have money, dumb fuck, right? Oh no, I'm losing $200 more a pay cycle because I gotta pay that guy a little bit more. But all my customers have more money. Everybody's got more disposable income. Oh my god, I'm living in a stable environment where everybody has more money. Oh, what do you fucking think is gonna happen, you dumb fuck? Like, what do you think is gonna happen? Unless your business is worthless, which it might be. And since when is your business, like, you don't have a right to have a business. There's no Charter of Rights and Freedoms protecting your fucking right to have a business, right? Like, people's lives are worth more than your stupid fucking business. Hey Ruth, how you doing? How you doing? Hey everyone, did you see Jagmeets? I've been doing so good. It's because I talked to my dad. It's because I talked to my dad and I was making fun of him. I was making fun of Jugmeat and all that. And so I was like, Jagmeat, and I was like doing all that shit. And so I fell right back into it. My apologies. Jugmeat's presser about unprivatizing seniors' homes and medical offices that the cons are pushing. Yeah, dude. Like, I get why the conservatives are enjoying a bit of a boost in the polls. I get why it's happening because they're running to the left of the liberals, right? And people like that. And so it's going up. But it really is going to come down to a choice between, like the conservatives are obviously lying. Like, they're not going to make good on any of this. Like, and even if they do, they'll do stuff to completely undercut it. And I've seen Jagmeet Singh saying he's going to eliminate subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. That has my vote right there. You're going to eliminate subsidies to the fossil fuel industry? Vote. I'm right on board with the NDP, right? But you know, if you don't really think that climate change is a big deal, and you don't actually think that the conservatives have a white supremacist movement in their party, which they obviously do, right? Then you can be easily swayed into the conservative camp, right? Like, and especially if you haven't been paying attention to politics ever, right? If you don't pay attention to politics and you just look at Aaron O'Toole right now and see him running on the left of the liberals and seeing him basically stealing stuff from the NDP platform, right? Yeah, I get it. I get how, like, a gullible populist that doesn't pay any attention could be like, that Aaron O'Toole's saying all the right things that I like, dibbity-ding. But you know what Aaron O'Toole isn't saying? He isn't saying raise taxes on the wealthy, so you know it's austerity for us, right? He is saying that he wants to introduce a private healthcare system to layer in. He wants to get, yeah, right. He's just going to layer in a private healthcare system, and then the public health system, no, we'll leave that alone for sure. It's not going to crush this, which is obviously the plan, unless you're a gullible rube. Like, the NDP platform right now is the platform that people should be voting for. Like, that seniors' homes and medical offices and all that kind of stuff should be nationalized. They should be nationalized. Of course they should be. Right? Why are we letting sociopaths make money off of the suffering of our elderly? That's exactly what we're doing. Right? And the reason why is because we're a business, we're not a society. Look at this name. Astif Base. Christophe Bafuf. I think I'll just call you Base, bud. If you're still here, hello, just wanted to say I really like what you do. Well, thank you so much, friend. I appreciate that a lot. That matters a lot to me. Abolish inheritance. Fuck them. We're hardcore, John. Yeah, entire article made my blood boil. Yeah, that's why I wanted to read this one. Like, this is a really, really good article. Like, and it's got all the answers for, like, all the dumb bullshit, like, the dumb, gullible bullshit nonsense that you hear these fucking simps for billionaires talking about. Hey, Ninetails, how you doing? Hey, I heard of a plan that would enroll each Canadian citizen in publicly owned business in order to gain a dividend each month, as opposed to a UBI, which would cause inflation. Is this a good idea? This is a method to just keep everybody working for the sociopath class. That's the point of that, right? So you enroll each Canadian citizen in a publicly owned business that they have to work for, right? That business, of course, is still is likely still owned in some measure by the billionaire class, who owns government bonds, right? Who owns stocks, who owns these sorts of things, and they purchase their political class in order to maintain the power. That's 100% what it is, and it's a reason why it's being pitched instead of something that would actually help people, like a basic income, right? Like, you can give 10 times the amount that we would give in terms of a basic income to the billionaire class, and no one bats an eye, right? That quantitative easing has been given to the billionaire class over and 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 over again. But the second you want to do the same for a guy that's collapsed on the street, suddenly, we got to come up with some other scam. And this is a scam, right? And if you fall for it, then you're just a gullible rube, right? We'll enroll a Canadian citizen in a publicly owned business. Of course, the billionaire own all these government bonds, so it's actually my business. But we'll force workers into it if they don't want to do that, then they can die on the street, right? Yeah, sounds good. It works in Alaska. Everyone gets a yearly dividend. I just am so skeptical. I'm so skeptical. I've met people in Toronto who worked with Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. They can confirm billionaires are sociopaths. Yeah, they have to be by definition, right? They have to be by definition. Like, if they weren't sociopaths, they wouldn't be billionaires. To become a billionaire, you have to just say farewell to your empathy. You have to completely disconnect from the idea that you want to help anybody, right? You're exploiting people by default. That's how you become a billionaire. And Misty, you're worth it, John. That's very sweet of you to say, Misty. That's very sweet of you to say. Mark, you're doing great things for the disabled. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I heard O'Toole is an American. Oh, yeah. When liberals faked a video, they lost seats. I think people aren't buying it. So will libs lose enough, or will NDP gain them? I just think the liberals are, their campaign is shit. Like, they're running a brutally bad campaign. Like, this campaign that they're running is worse than the Tom Mulcair campaign. At least Tom Mulcair was walking around offering stuff, right? Sure, he was walking around being like, I'm Rafi. Look at me, I'm Tom Mulcair. Hey, everybody, you want healthcare? How about Mulcair, right? Like, this kind of really dumb shit. It just ran like a really terrible campaign, but at least he was still offering things. Like, at least he was still talking about ways to help Canada and Canadians, right? These liberals, they're not offering fucking anything. They're literally playing catch up with the conservatives. That the conservatives have outflanked them on the left badly, and the best that the liberals can do is pick up the ball and actually just match these conservatives. They're not even attempting to reclaim a position on the left, right? That all they're doing is matching what the conservatives are saying. So for many Canadians, they're just like, well, if you're just going to play matchy match, right? I'm going to give the conservatives the ball for a little bit of time, right? And like, you know, if you don't acknowledge that climate change is a problem, and if you don't think that the conservatives are taken over by a white supremacist movement, then that sounds reasonable, right? Don't say that you're a simp for me, Crutching. I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know how to feel about that. But please tell your buddies about my channel. Absolutely. I could use the advertising. Yeah, it's a fair trade. They got Tes Cruz, exactly. That's why they haven't produced anything. They just want to one-up the cons, exactly. But that's the thing. They don't want to one-up the cons, right? They don't want to one-up the conservatives. Right now, they're just matching the conservatives and not even matching the conservatives, right? That right now, the conservatives are offering more than the liberals are. It's a disaster for the liberals. It's a disaster. Yeah, shocker, the She-Cession campaign not going well, yeah. Oh man, I was really looking forward to this she-covery, right? Man, aren't you guys sad that we're not going to get the she-covery? I don't need to play this one quite yet. I'm just, okay, so we're at 7 o'clock. You know what that means, guys. You know what that means. Here's the song. This is my Care Bear stare against the capitalist class. This song is entitled, if you haven't heard it before, the song is entitled Antarctica is Covered in Ice. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoky sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes to sweep me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, where everybody's safe, no one's sleeping in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice when everybody's safe? No one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice when Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know that we can do it. I know that we can do it. I believe and I know. I believe and I know that we can do it. Because the solution is so easy. It's so simple. It's so straightforward that even us stupid, idiotic humans can do it. We don't need a big plan. We don't need a technology. We don't need a savior. We don't need any of that. All we need to do is stop. That's it. Just stop. Just deal with the consequences of stopping, which will be much easier to handle and to deal with than the consequences of continuing doing what we're doing. Just stop. And when we stop, and I believe that we can, when we stop, we are going to stand back and witness something that we will describe to our children as a miracle. That the earth itself will heal itself so quickly, that it will make our attempts to destroy it look like a child squalling in their mother's arms. This place was a garden before we got here. This place wants to be a garden. I see gardens taking over buildings. I see the sides of buildings getting crushed by plants and trees. I see trees pushing their way through brick walls that we built 20 years ago. This place wants to be a garden. And all we have to do, if we want to see it happen, is stop. It couldn't be easier. It couldn't be easier. I swear to God, one of these days I'm going to get through this song and that speech without crying. I swear to God it's going to happen, you guys. I swear to God. So please consider donating $1. Please consider putting $1 in my Patreon. And if you're already donating $1, please consider making it $2. You came in at a weird time, Onward, that's all. That's all. I played the song and I did my speech and I cried a little. And you came in right when I was like crying, right? Of course. Go back and watch the whole thing. It was beautiful, Onward. It was a beautiful artistic piece that I feel would touch anybody's heart. To answer the question directly, I'm actually doing very well, bud. I am actually doing very well. I had a lovely conversation with my father today. I feel like my family... okay, let's get a little personal, sure. I think my family is concerned about me, right? And I get where they're coming from. That my family has a history of bipolar and a history of mental illness. That I have an auntie who has a kid who has bipolar. I have an uncle who has a kid who has bipolar, right? And then my mom has 3 kids. My brother isn't bipolar. My sister isn't bipolar. Hey, John, you're doing a YouTube channel, you say? Oh, interesting. And it's actually very sweet, and they're being very kind about it. And I don't think I'm bipolar, but I don't know. I do run a YouTube channel where I play songs and make speeches and then cry. But it's actually quite nice. It's quite nice that I have a family that is talking to me, and they know that I lost my job. They know that I just recently went through a breakup. I went through a breakup in a 10-year relationship. And so this year has been isolating by definition, right? They know that that's the truth. But they don't know that I've got a cute little pug here. So to answer your question more directly, I feel like I'm doing okay. I got a job on the weekends, right? Gonna pay a little bit of get a little coin that way. It's not gonna interfere with the live stream, which is really nice. It's nice that I feel stable. I feel stable, even though I am probably not. Probably not as stable in terms of my positioning or financing in the society. I wish I was more stable. Which is a great opportunity for you guys to donate $1, right? Okay, I'll stop. That's the last one. Fuck, do I hate that. Anyway, thanks for your concern, bud. I appreciate it. I just think you came in at, the worst possible moment. You know what I'm talking about? The worst possible moment. Okay. Let's move on from that, eh? Things got real personal there. Yeah, here's Aaron O'Toole. Aaron O'Toole just said that he won't stop Doug Ford and other premiers from privatizing healthcare. You're going to vote for this guy? Literally, Aaron O'Toole's going to get in. You know what Doug Ford's going to do. Doug Ford's already worked to privatize this place. He's already worked to do all that shit. Ugh. And look at this, right? So, literally, as this is from 338. Well, Ruth, that's some wise words right there. Knowing where you're going and what you want is the first step, bud. I know what I want. I know what I want. I sing that song every day and I mean it every day. And that's what I want. That's what I want. No idea where I'm going though. If this live stream is the only place I go, actually, you know what? I know exactly where I'm going. I'm going to be the Prime Minister of Canada. You guys watch. Anyway, 338 Canada. This is their federal simulator, right? And 338 is an aggregate site. So, like, if you click on the Canada polls here, it'll show you this is all data from all of the polling done aggregately. So, what that means is, like, you know, Main Street, Ecos, Abacus data. They all do their own independent polling, and every time one comes out, well, each one of those polls represents a little dot. Can I click on these dots? That'd be cool, eh? That'd be super cool if I could click on the dot and take me to the poll. And you can see like a trend downward for the Liberals and a trend upwards for the Conservatives. The NDP kind of maintaining their position, more or less. And but what this does is then they aggregate all that data and they put it into a simulator. And if you actually project the seats, so sometimes I don't know why this is in, all right, whatever. So 151 seats is a decline for the Liberals, right? The Conservatives are increasing their seat total, as are the NDP, to the detriment of the Liberals. And it makes total sense. The Liberals are running a disastrous campaign, right? The Liberals are running this campaign that, like, they're not going to recover from. Like, I don't see how the Liberals can actually pull up on this anymore. Because, like, even if they come out and offer the moon, I think that both the Conservatives and the NDP have them pegged, right? That they're like, do you believe these guys? And the populace is kind of being like, not really. Like, not really. And it's important, I think, to look at the aggregate data because sometimes polling like this will come out. And this comes out, this is from Abacus, right? So Abacus data has the NDP up by 7 points and the Conservatives down by 5 points, right? So that doesn't really, so that's kind of on the outside of what is actually happening in terms of the aggregate sort of site. But it's hopeful, and it's hopeful for us here in Canada. I hope that kind of stuff manifests. I hope the NDP. Oh man, the debates, man, the debates are where it's going to be at. I gotta take a look at something here quickly. September. So that's actually 8th and 9th, and so it's probably going to be in the evening, right? So hold on. Canada debates, because I want to like actually play the debates. When are they? When are they? Here you go. And like what time? Like what's the information? Here you go. The English debate is scheduled for September 9th from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Oh, great. So I can do my thing and then immediately show it. I'll only show the English debate because I don't speak French. So on the 9th, come here, right? 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. We're going to watch it. I'm just going to watch the shit out of it because I think that the debates are going to be, like, crucially important this time around. I think that the debates are going to be absolutely crucial and that people are going to make their decisions based on what happens in those debates. Yep, that's what happens when you run your big ego, your dad's name, and your high school style popularity. Well, and this whole thing just reeks of arrogance and privilege, eh? Like, literally, they announce the campaign. They announce that they're going to do this campaign. Most Canadians, vast majority of Canadians believe Trudeau could have waited a year until calling election. Seen as power grab. So people are coming down on the idea. Do I get a chart? Yeah. Do I get a chart? The election could have waited until next year. 69%, nice, of Canadians are saying that they could have waited until next year. And I think people are starting to settle in to this actually mattering for them. That it didn't really matter initially, but now that we're in election season and people are actually dealing with the reality of being in an election season while simultaneously dealing with all the nonsense of all of this, I think people are holding a little bit of a grudge and kind of being like, the To justify his decision to send Canadians to the polls on September 20th, Trudeau has argued that the minority parliament had become toxic and dysfunctional. Dude, it's not... You know what a toxic and dysfunctional minority parliament looks like? It means that the parliament votes to disband. It means that you get a no confidence vote. That's what a toxic and dysfunctional parliament looks like. That's how minority governments typically fall. It's actually quite rare to see what we saw here, where it was a minority government that was actually working together, actually functioning, passing legislation, passing ideas, doing all that kind of stuff, and then to have a government declare the election early. Like, and most Canadians, 70% of Canadians, think that it could have waited a year, right? And what's blistering about this is that the Trudeau government announces the election a year early and offers absolutely nothing. They're literally standing there with their hand out going, majority please, while offering nothing. Like, literally nothing. Like, what's their big offer? That they're gonna, like, what? They're gonna train 1,000 firefighters? Right? Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Well, he also now has Afghanistan has taken away the attention he needs to give to the election. I don't think so. Canadians don't really pay attention to foreign politics, honestly. Like, if they did, the Liberals would have, like, well, or if they do pay attention to foreign politics, it's like, it is the most bigoted perspective, right? Like, Canadians generally don't allow foreign politics to dictate how they vote. It's just not part of it. You know, that if Trudeau wants to walk around saying that Juan Guaido is this and that the Taliban are terrorists and all that kind of stuff, yeah, okay, sure, right? Who gives a fuck? Is he going to lower the price of my housing? That's what Canadians really care about. So, election 2021, Liberals promised to build 1.4 million new homes so that the billionaires can buy 1.4 million new homes, and ban foreign home ownership. This is actually a big deal, except it's something the Conservatives already offered, right? And this article even says it. Yeah, the Liberals' housing plan also includes a ban on foreign home ownership for 2 years, the same promise the Conservative Party made in their housing platform announced last week. So that's literally just give people like a two-year window to get in there before the billionaires start buying it up again, right? And even then, like, so I'm a foreign buyer, I'll just open up a Canadian office, and now I'm a domestic buyer, right? Like, it's very strange to me that the same people who are genuinely walking around saying, like, well, the ultra-rich will just avoid taxes, and they'll find a way to evade the tax, and all this kind of stuff, don't also think that foreign buyers can find a way to evade any kind of, like, it's like the same, it's just incomprehensible, right? He lost time the others had because he had to work instead of show off. So did the NDP. No. Both of those, like, the Liberals have a strong PR team. They have a strong policy and PR team that knows how to set up an election campaign. And if they weren't ready for the campaign, they should have waited, right? That they should have waited. For sure they should have waited if they weren't ready. Like, this campaign that we're seeing the Liberals do is the worst in my lifetime. I don't think I've seen anybody run a worse campaign than this. Who has run a worse campaign than this? And I don't see how they're going to pull up on it, right? Like what can they, like, unless they literally come out and say we're going to do the basic income, like, unless they literally come out and take a swing hard on that, like, I don't see them even maintaining the amount of seats they had in the first place. That this election is turning into, like, a real disaster. And, like, you've got Justin Trudeau saying, like, if Canadians actually cared about foreign policy, like, you got Justin Trudeau saying, on Black Ribbon Day, we remember the victims of communism and Nazism. We stand with the survivors and their descendants, and with those who continue to face violence and persecution from authoritarian and totalitarian regimes. Ben Norton. Actually, it was communism that defeated Nazism. 26 million Soviets sacrificed their lives to crush Hitler's Germany, compared to just 400,000 Americans and Brits. And 20 million Chinese died beating the Japanese fascism. This is Holocaust revisionism from Western imperialist governments, right? And that's just the truth. Like the whole victims of communism memorial that the Trudeau government funds is embarrassing because they include Nazis as the victims of communism, right? Just go take a look at it. You can go find all the Nazis are there. Like, your government hard at work. Demonizing communists while propping up Nazis as victims. Difference is NDP is not letting CMHC give out loans to rich builders for unneeded housing and more affordable rentals. Oh yeah. It's true, they don't realize the Russians went it right after nearing the end. Well, I mean, you just got to take a look at the map, right? Like Google Maps, right? Like the Eastern Offensive was by far the most important offensive. Like the war raged like basically all the way around down this border, right? Like this border with the Nazis pushing in, right? Like this tract of land here is where most of the war was fought for the longest period of time. These countries got completely destroyed. They just got completely decimated. Like, and the push into Moscow, like this whole area was completely annihilated. The Americans and the Canadians, they didn't have a German boot didn't touch their soil, right? There was no war as far as the Canadians and the Americans were concerned, like the citizens. I mean, Russia went in at the end of World War II. People have short memories. Yeah, well, and it just goes to show you, like, polling data right after the war was over, people were asked who won the war. It was the Russians by far. And then as time has moved forward, people's opinions have changed, and it's changed that no, it's the U.S., right? And it's like, no. Like, no. The Russians always won that war. Ugh. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope I didn't chase you away. I hope I didn't chase you away with my passion. Election 2021. This is from rabble.ca. Federal failure on housing must come to an end. I think this is another one I'm going to read. You know, I'm going to take a bit of a break here. I really like this. This comes from the Breach Media. They talk about the Trudeau grift, and they do it very effectively. So I'm going to take a moment. Let you guys check this out.
Why is Justin Trudeau marching to demand climate action from the government when he's literally in charge? It might seem cringy, but it's actually part of a calculated and dangerous strategy, and the secret to Trudeau's success. The Liberals have mastered the art of changeless change. They seduce progressive voters by appearing to disrupt business as usual, while serving the elite by simultaneously defending their wealth and power. I call this playbook the Trudeau formula, and it has 5 steps.
If we don't deliver fairness, Canadians will eventually entertain more radical options.
That was Trudeau on Bay Street a few months before his election in 2015, offering a classic Liberal warning to the corporate elite. It's either us or the pitchforks. Whenever discontent builds up, the Liberals have always been there to safely channel it like a political shock absorber.
Canada must be progressive, and Canada must be a just society.
They'll wink to the elite and then pose as anti-establishment to the broader population. What comes next is a tactic summed up by former Liberal advisor Warren Kinsella. Find a parade and get out in front of it. This is the Liberal trick to simulate real change. Adopt the language and the symbolism of social movements without doing anything to actually challenge the status quo. And when things get especially sensitive, there's one sure way to tell. Trudeau breaks out the denim jacket.
So what was your message in coming out here today? A message of respect and reconciliation.
Social movements are most effective when they maintain independence and make noise outside Parliament. Trudeau Liberals are experts at disarming their power by inviting them inside. They disconnect leaders from civil society by recruiting them to the party. They welcome progressive groups into consultations and advisory councils to make them believe that access equals influence. They dangle funding in front of some groups to ensure they don't rock the boat. And they shower others with attention and even personal rewards if they're willing to take their organizations in liberal-friendly directions. To take the wind out of the sails of radical change, the Liberals cherry-pick demands from the progressive agenda, then usually water them down or endlessly delay their implementation. The Liberal Party first promised pharmacare in 1997, guaranteed basic income in 1970, and electoral reform in 1923. This year, they're finally getting around to childcare, with a few of the usual Liberal-style caveats. While Liberals drag their heels on truly liberatory measures, they disguise their pro-corporate agenda as progressive and then smuggle it past unsuspecting voters.
I think we should burn it.
Burn it, my prince. It's a gift to the gods.
Beware of liberals bearing gifts. Trudeau's carbon price, lauded as a solution to the climate crisis, has actually long been advocated for by major oil companies as a fig leaf for more pipelines and tar sands production. Liberal reconciliation has involved spectacular apologies for the past that mask colonial crimes in the present, including a renewed push to eliminate Indigenous land rights. So-called progressive and inclusive trade deals still allow Canadian companies to sue other countries in unaccountable private courts whenever environmental or labor policies impact their bottom line. And Trudeau's talk of championing peace and human rights abroad has distracted from Canada's transformation into the world's second biggest weapons dealer to the Middle East.
924 LAV 6s, essentially the most modern light armored vehicles.
And what happens once the formula breaks down? There's always a fail-safe final option. When the shine wears off, Liberals deploy their electoral escape hatch.
Strategic voting.
Strategic voting.
Strategically vote.
Strategic voting.
Strategic voting.
Strategic voting.
How many Canadians will vote strategically just to keep the Tories out of power?
Making people think the country is stuck between two parties has one objective: muzzling the country's progressive majority and scaring them into settling for the Liberals. But of course, we can do better. It's only when we stop falling for the Trudeau formula that we will be able to unleash our collective imagination.
And I am a bit concerned that we are just going to see an election that kind of comes down to, like, gotta vote Liberal or else the Conservatives will win, right? Like, that could be part of the strategy, that, like, well, they're not offering anything, they're not actually doing anything, right? So what are they banking on? They're banking on surging Conservative support so that they can say, oh, gotta vote Liberal or else the Conservative will get in, right? That sort of absurd nonsense. But I think the numbers are too low to actually let that happen, right? And one thing that I actually saw, people are starting to see what I'm starting to see. And we're starting to see clear articulations of people kind of saying the same stuff that I'm saying. So here's a great articulation.
I really appreciate
the help I'm getting in the comments from fellow progressives, economists, people who can do basic math, but I need you to accept something for me, because it's only become clear to me in the last couple of years, and I think it's going to help you in your political discourse with your family members, with your coworkers, with your colleagues, your clients. Conservatives, by and large, don't care about the money. $10 a day childcare. I saw this 100 times in the comments there. Who's going to pay for this? Why should my tax dollars go to pay for that? And you can explain to them again and again and again and again and again that $10 a day childcare is going to save everybody money. You can explain it. You can explain that housing the homeless is cheaper. You can explain that safe injection sites save millions of dollars in healthcare money. You can explain it till you are red in the face. I've fucking done it. Deep down, these people don't give a fuck about the money. Fiscal conservatism, go fuck yourself. You don't give a fuck about the money. Then why? Good question. Great question. And I hope you're sitting down for this. Because they want women, disabled people, drug addicts, the homeless to suffer and to die in silence. And they're willing to pay money for it. They're willing to pay more in taxes. They're willing to pay more for healthcare. They're willing to pay more for housing, for public transport. They're willing to pay more and get less as long as it means that the people that they judge not worthy suffer. If you think I'm wrong, look around you. Just look. That's all you got to do is look.
It's becoming obvious, right? Like, it's becoming obvious. I say it all the time on this channel. More and more and more people are starting to stand up and articulate in the perspective that they have and the way that they are seeing the world, something that is intrinsically obvious now. Our society has been taken over by a death cult. That it denies the existence of climate change. If it does acknowledge the existence of climate change, it does nothing to ameliorate it. That its acknowledgement is merely a way to placate and pander to rising energy in the populace. That the society has already structured itself to abandon large segments of the populace and to pay more to spread suffering, as this gentleman articulates. I don't actually know who this guy is. I don't actually know. Let's dig a little deeper. Let's find out. Can I get? Let's see who this guy. That's a great question, actually. Not seeing anybody like out this guy. Yeah, I should definitely source this guy. Cruelty is the point. Bibbity bobbity. Yeah, nobody is like standing up and being like, "Who is this guy?" Yeah, here he is. Somebody saying, "Who is this guy?" No answer. Yeah, just some random dude. Just random dude. Oh, here we go. Here we go. He is Timothy Daigle 33 on TikTok. So, there you go. Timothy Daigle 33. I will even. Oh, it's not going to let me do that. It's not going to let me do that. Too much. Too many characters. You can find him on TikTok. Timothy Daigle 33. Timothy Daigle. You can find him. And but it's like I say, like it's becoming very straightforward. It's becoming very obvious. It's becoming very clear that the people who are running this place are not interested in running they're not interested in saving money. It is not a financial issue. That they view what they are doing as worth the cost. That spreading misery and suffering into the population is worth the cost. That itself has value to them. That if you are desperate and poor, then you are going to work for them, for scraps, for a pittance. That is how it is structured, and that is their goal. And if they were interested in saving money, well, then they would house the homeless. If they were interested in saving money, then they would feed the hungry. If they were interested in saving money, there's a million things that they could do. But they don't. Because the suffering is the point. Because they're already in the position they want to be in, which is as a worthless parasite doing nothing of value while you do all the work for them. That's already the position they want. Why would they do anything to threaten that position? What did he mean by make women suffer? I mean, you can see what's going on throughout the United States, like the repealing of anti-abortion laws, the repealing of what the conservatives are doing throughout the southern states, like making people suffer and subserviating. And I mean, you can take a look at what's going on with with OnlyFans, right? Here's something that I haven't talked about on this channel, but OnlyFans. We all heard this news, right? OnlyFans has decided that it's not going to allow adult content on its platform, right? Like, and when you think OnlyFans, you're just like, well, isn't that what OnlyFans is for? Isn't the whole point of OnlyFans to have adult content on it? And this is a classic maneuver that has been done over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? You have a population and a society that has abandoned the poor and the desperate and the needy. And so many young women in that society, understanding that they have been abandoned, right? What do? Well, they turn to sex work, right? If not prostitution, then something like OnlyFans, where they sell themselves online, right? Where they sell their labor to an entertainment industry, if you like to put it that way, right? And places like OnlyFans, and this has happened plenty of times in the past. So OnlyFans gets fat and rich because of these sex workers, right? It secures itself in the market and stabilizes itself and becomes a multi-million-dollar company because of sex workers, right? And then it turns around because it's told to by the banks and by the credit card industry, and it turns around and it bans sex workers from its platform after those sex workers are responsible for making them rich, right? And so what does this do, right? It renders multiple women, right? And it's not just women, but it's proportionally more women. It puts them in a state of instability, right? And ultimately what happens if you continue doing this to sex workers is that it forces them to get things like pimps. It forces them to interact with the society that actively works to demonize and criminalize their behavior, which, near as I can tell, is pretty fucking normal, right? It's pretty fucking normal to have sex. It's pretty fucking normal. There's a reason why it's called the oldest profession. Like, the idea that we're walking around demonizing this is weird to me. And especially the women who, like, OnlyFans is relatively safe, right? It's relatively safe. You've got a whole screen, you got a whole thing separating you. But instead of allowing these women to continue doing their work in this safe environment, you're going to destabilize them. You're going to force them onto other sites, and at worse, you're going to force them away from doing like OnlyFans work, which is just like webcam work, into actual prostitution, which, near as I can tell, seems to be the goal, right? To destabilize the lives of these women, to make things harder for them. And it's built into the society. And like, and the entire reason that they're doing it in the first place, I mean, I do believe that if suddenly everybody's food and shelter was taken care of and like all of that was all fine and like there was no concern for any of that, I still think there would be people doing stuff like OnlyFans. I still like there's still going to be strippers. Like that shit's still going to happen. Like that's very human. Like we definitely want that to happen. But there's for sure people involved in that industry who just don't have any alternative, that they have bills to pay, right? And if you genuinely were concerned about them, like if you're one of these conservative types, and you were genuinely concerned about them, well, you would ensure their health and well-being. But they're not, right? They're not. That they think that those people are dingy and disgusting and they want to throw them out on the street. Yeah, Crouching, I have nothing against sex work, but it's sad to me that people have to go that low to get by in this society. My God, yeah. But like, what's the difference between someone selling their body on OnlyFans and someone selling their body to be a cashier? What's the difference really? Like really? Like when you actually look at those two things, you've got a cashier standing at a cash, putting, through things, beep, 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 doing all that kind of stuff, making like a pittance wage, while their owners, who they've never met, make the vast majority of the money, and can, at a moment's notice, abandon that worker onto the street. What's the difference between that cashier and, an OnlyFans model who is, chatting up people on a webcam, making money for a person they've never met, who can, at a moment's notice, throw them out onto the street? Like, what fundamentally is the difference? They're both selling their body. They're both selling their time, right? The only difference that I can see is that we have kind of a degenerate view of sex. That that people who enjoy sex are perverts. Like, imagine that. Like, if somebody enjoys sex, they're a pervert. Like, I think there's something intrinsically wrong with our society because of this dynamic. OnlyFans made someone else very rich, yeah? Someone else will create a platform. Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. That's definitely going to happen. Like, but it's gonna be the same cycle, right? It's gonna be the same exact cycle. That because at the end of the day, it's pressure from the credit card companies and the banks that are making it happen, right? That like, what was OnlyFans supposed to do? Right? If OnlyFans stood up and said, well, no, we're not going to abandon these women, well, then you don't get to use credit cards on your website. Oh. Like, how do you even pay for stuff? Right? Like, that kind of denigration of sex workers and women, specifically, is built into the structure. That's how it happens. Right? Like, I'll never forget. I found out only about 3 or 4 months ago that women in the United States were not allowed to have their own bank account until the mid-'80s. Like, really let that settle in. That if you were a woman living in America, you weren't allowed to have your own bank account until the mid-'80s. What? You needed to have a man if you wanted to have a bank account in America. What? Like, just that fact alone subserviates women as an underclass permanently in the society, right? Like, you need to have a father who is going to have a bank account for you, or you need to have a brother, or you need to have a husband, right? If you're a woman, you can't just walk into a bank and expect to open a bank account. What? And that's how it was. Like, and of course the society wants women to suffer. Like, of course the society wants women to suffer. That these poverty policies that spread poverty, disproportionately affect women. Yeah, exactly. Never mind they use sex to advertise to you 24/7. And then they'll turn around and say to the women that they're using in the ads to get a real job. Right? that they're completely happy to use these women as models and as workers while simultaneously denigrating them and shitting on them, right? That fundamentally, what's the difference between what they're doing and what a model is doing? And this just speaks to sort of the oddity that we have in regards to nudity, in regards to why are we? And I understand that I am risking sounding like a total pervy guy, right? I understand that. I understand that I'm wading into sort of odd territory here, and I understand that. But I genuinely believe that people should be able to do with their bodies what they want to do, right? And if people want to engage in the act of sex, which is built in to our society, it's not built into our society. It's built into the framework of our DNA. And if a person wants to engage in the sexual activity in the act of enjoying sex, great. Okay. What's the problem? What's the problem? That's the big question I've got for lots of these people. What's the problem here? And when you actually investigate what the problem is, you find out that it's the fact that they haven't grown up and they're having emotions that they can't handle. And it's oh, well, maybe go and grow up, maybe handle your emotions, get your shit together, right? I saw a beautiful woman and she gave me emotions and but she won't have sex with me, so she must be a whore. Grow up, dude. Grow up. It's these people who imagine seeing a beautiful flower and thinking that that's disgusting. That's where we're at as a society. Hey, Nova Scotia commie, don't know if I've ever seen you in here. Good to see you. I like that you're flaunting the commie like me. That's nice. If they're not on the street, they can't be fined to raise money for the piggy empire. Yeah. And I genuinely believe that our society does everything it can to maintain the power of pimps in sex work. That any opportunity that women have to get away from pimps, the society works hard to reinstitute pimps. Because there is a segment of the society that refuses to believe that these women should be free to act accordance to their own will and need to be subjugated violently by a pimp, right? Take a look at the pimp culture that existed throughout the 90s and early 2000s, right? The glorification of the pimp that occurred throughout the society, right? That pimps not only became sort of buffoonish in the culture, they became comedic icons, right? They became a guy would walk in wearing the fur coat and the cane and the gold tooth and all this kind of stuff, and there'd be this music that would play when he would walk in, and we were all supposed to sit there and be like, ha ha ha, pimps are violent oppressors who have stables of women they abuse and throw out, and we turned them into light-hearted comedy figures. It's brutal. Why do you think Epstein did so well? Yeah, that's a great connection to make, Ruth. Why do you think Epstein did so well? You can't let women just be free. You can't let women just freely operate as sex workers. They need someone like Jeffrey Epstein, right? Jeffrey Epstein has to be the connection. That they need to be owned, right? They need to be in a stable. They need a pimp. And our culture has done everything it can to turn pimps into harmless, sort of buffoonish, they're goons and they're hooligans, right? But I mean they're relatively harmless, right? A pimp has never beaten a prostitute to death. That's never happened. right? A pimp doesn't actively abandon women to the streets the second they won't do what he says, right? That doesn't happen, right? Like, pimps aren't one of the most brutal figures in the society, right? No. They're just like smooth talking, like they wear a lot of purple, like fur coats, right? And in many instances, the way that pimps are talked about in the society is something to be glorified and loved. That we love pimps. That we look at pimps and we go like, yeah, there's just a businessman, right? There's just a guy plying his trade. And when you actually investigate what his trade is, well, his trade is abusing women and exploiting them. That's his trade, right? And like the idea that pimps were just in our movies and our television shows as like these comedic, like trickster figures. What the fuck was that? It was just a way to sell us on the idea that women who have been forced into prostitutes are subhuman people who need owners. And like, and the violence that was done towards these women who are in this situation is explicit, right? Like that like literally a guy could like do this, right? How many times do we see this in our media where a pimp will be like, come on, and like do this? Well, it's explicit. It's explicit violence that's stated and seen, and we know it happens. But because prostitutes aren't people, right? Because prostitutes don't have a story, right? Unless they're fucking Julia Roberts in Pretty Women, who gets saved by a white knight, literally a rich dude, Richard Gere, who comes and rescues her from her dingy prostitution life, right? Unless it's fucking Julia Roberts for some reason. I remember growing up, I grew up in a Christian evangelical household. My movies were like Sister Act, like Home Alone, right? Those sorts of movies. But for whatever fucking reason, that movie, Pretty Women, made the cut that I was completely allowed to, when I was like 10 years old, watch a movie that was about a prostitute selling herself to Richard Gere until they fell in love and he rescued her from prostitution. That like that's the distortion that exists within the mind of the American male. That we have this extremely distorted view of how sex work exists in our society, how life works in the society. We have this and we're completely disconnected from what reality is. A pimp isn't asking for a handout, at least. Yeah, he's just a good, hardworking capitalist, right? Like, this is the thing that the capitalists don't want you to put together, by the way. Like, what a pimp does is the same as what your owners are doing. It's the same arrangement, right? That the pimp owns the business, right? You're not allowed to compete with the pimp. And if you step out of line, then the pimp can abandon you or exploit you or abuse you how he sees fit, right? It's the same thing that the capitalists are doing, right? A pimp is just a good capitalist. That's it. Dave Chappelle talked about that. Dave Chappelle actually has like a really brilliant story that he tells about that, where he talks about this pimp who has a girl who's working for him, and the girl wants to leave him, right? The girl's kind of getting over it, and she's getting to be leaving, and so the pimp runs a con on the girl and ties her into this story where she goes to meet a guy, and then the guy like has a heart attack, and the pimp blames her and says like, hey, you're gonna get in trouble for this, like the cops are gonna want to find out, but I can protect you if you keep working for me. And so she does, but it turns out that the guy who had the heart attack never had the heart attack. Like, they had called a doctor to the scene, not a doctor, right? That it was a con that they ran on this girl so she would keep working for this pimp. And Dave Chappelle ends the story and says, and that's capitalism, baby. And it's absolutely the truth. Like, it's absolutely the truth. And one of the big reasons why I think that we have such an anti-sex society, one of the big reasons why I think we work as hard as we do to convince each other and everyone around us that sex is something that we should do, like, it's got to be done in hushed tones and behind the thing. You can't actually talk about it. You can't actually, like, be serious about it. Like, you're allowed to do that with one woman that you have, like, tied yourself to completely, and you're in your bedroom and the drapes are drawn and everything's closed and, like, all of that, and you're safe and it can be put away, and that's the only way that you're allowed to do it and be free, and nobody will judge you and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the reason why that's done is because if people understood that sex is nice and we like it, and it should be more freely acceptable, and we should have, like, a free love movement like happened in the 60s, that that's something the capitalists can't actually sell. And if people understood that basic drive, that basic connection to our basic humanity, right, was far more important to us than grinding our lives into a capitalist enterprise that robs our lives from us, that we might actually stand up and collapse the system. Because this capitalist system is not allowing us to go and have sex. We have less sex than Gen X did. Like, the millennials have less sex than Gen X did than the boomers did, right? By a lot. It's not small margins. It's by a lot, right? And this robbing of, like, our basic pleasures in the society is the reason why why people turn to pornography. Is the reason why OnlyFans becomes a big deal. Because we're so fucking isolated. We can't, like, go out and do anything. We can't meet people. We don't have the energy for it. We don't have the time for it, right? So and so what you end up with is like this pent up, angry ass society that is turning on itself. When, in my view, right, all of these, like, angry alt-right men who can't get laid, like these incels, right, and all of these, like, social justice warrior types on the left, right, they just need to fuck each other. Oh, that's so fun to say out loud. I remember reading an essay by Wilhelm Reich about how important unreleased sexual energy is to fascism. Yeah, Wilhelm Reich had to be onto something. The government ordered tons of his writing burned. But dude, take a look at, like, incels, okay? Incels are great to talk about. Like, an incel will literally grab a gun, right? Or get into a vehicle and go into a group of people and, like, ram into them and shoot them up for the explicit, stated reason of, I can't get laid. Like, this shit's important. Like, this shit's important. People will blow themselves up. Like, actually. They will actually blow themselves up because they have this pent-up sexual energy that they can't do anything with. Right? And so... And exactly, no fat Proud Boys, right? So they take all of that angst and that energy that's built up inside of them, and it gets funneled into violence, right? It gets funneled into violence. That energy goes to violence. Yeah, get back, you'll feel a whole lot better. Ruth raises a really excellent point. Why do you think sex feels best after an argument, right? You have, like, these unreleased, and you're releasing all of this, like, angst and this anger and this, and there's a freedom to it. Yeah, it's pretty crazy the amount of incels. Well, and like, I genuinely think that this society needs to get laid. Like, the society needs to get laid. I mean, we don't have a society, we have a business, right? But, like, if we actually got laid, it'd be like a society building activity, right? And I know I was kind of saying it jokingly, but, like, the incel boys and the social justice warrior girls should get laid. And it just makes sense to like put these two together and just get them laid, right? Like they're both politically passionate. They're both motivated to get out onto the streets and fight, right? And they both have an odd relationship to their sexual selves, right? They have so much in common. They just need to get to it. Opposites attract and all that. Come on. Right? Tell me I'm wrong. Right? How am I wrong on this? But like, yeah, we need more leisure time. Well, and like, we don't have, like, the leisure time that we're given, right, is so small and fragile, right? So you can't really build up any meaningful kind of relationship or connection with anyone, which is why we have like this upswing of pornography, right? Because all people have are fleeting moments to which they can engage in their base emotions and their base desires, and so they are sold it, and it's been completely commodified. It's been completely commodified. Because to actually go and find an individual and build the relationship and then actually engage in like a sexual enterprise takes time, energy, and is difficult. It is one of the more difficult things to achieve in this society, right? Like, and it seems as though it's become structural. It seems as though it's being done on purpose, and that there is this like by and large denigration of people who want to do it. Like, I know for a fact that there are people who would listen to the way I'm talking right now and they would call me a degenerate pervert. Just for talking about it. Just for being like, hey, sex exists. Shouldn't we talk about sex? Hey, sex workers exist. Shouldn't we want them to be safe? Right? Oh, you degenerate pervert. How dare you want women doing sex work to be protected? Right? I know for a fact that those people exist. Like, which to me is insane. Like, I'm just like what's their point even? Like, their point is literally that people who enjoy sex are bad. Like, imagine like, and what's so strange to me, it's always strange to me when I meet these kinds of people and they have kids. And I'm just like, well, how did this happen? Right? Well, I did that within the sanctimony of the relationship that and like, when you listen to them actually talk about it, it sounds like a weird kinky fetish that they have, right? Doesn't it sound like a weird kinky fetish that they have? That there's this one person who, behind closed doors, behind drapes, I am permitted to disrobe in front of, and permitted to be vulnerable and bare myself with. And with that one person, we will, like, that sounds like some kinky shit. Right? That's your kink. That's what you want to go fucking do. Fantastic. Well, don't turn around and kink shame other people with your weird little monogamous, like, after marriage kind of shit. Especially while you're walking around with a little kid walking around. We know what you did. We know what you did. We got the evidence. We know what you did. Stop fucking pretending. Like, what's the bullshit? Yeah, Puritanism, eh? The Puritan work ethic has been like a completely, complete disaster. For everybody. There's a reason they get thrown out. I don't understand why it is that people who get thrown out of their own country, we don't immediately look at and go like, so what's the deal? Like, this is what happened to Falun Gong. Like, Falun Gong, which is like a cult that the conservatives give money to advertise in their stupid paper, the Epoch Times, they got thrown out of China. And here in the West, we're just like, yeah, come on board, come on over, not thinking like, maybe there's a reason these guys get thrown out of their country. Like, maybe there's a reason the Puritans get thrown out of their country. Yet today, weekend, one day to recover, and perhaps one day you wear yourself a little bit. Yeah. It's really sad now, John. Now that I'm single, I have to watch more porn. It's only natural. Hard to, well, good for you for taking the step to admit it to all of us, Crouching. No judgment, though. No judgment. Back in the day, a night at the bar Could be a marriage in 6 months. Yeah. Yeah. But you don't see that kind of shit anymore. And it's so difficult to like, and there's this, and this also ties in with, and I think that this is sort of natural. I don't think that this is intentional, but like, because of the rise of a feminist movement and like a women's rights movement, there has been this tie-in that says that men are dangerous. And I mean, men are dangerous, like we are, right? But it's become more difficult for a man to approach a woman and see any headway. Because, like, we're not even starting from, oh, who's this loser, right? Like, I feel like when I talk to older women, right, that they have this kind of attitude that, like, a man approaches me in the bar and I'm, like, looking at this guy like, who's this joker? Who's this loser, right? Who's this loser coming up here to bug me, right? That's kind of the position that men work from, it seems like. But today, men are working from, like, this man might be a potential rapist. Like, that's where women are starting with men today. And, like, if I approach a woman in a setting that you're supposed to approach women in, that we're all here in a place where you're obviously supposed to be approaching women, that the attitude that comes my way and the way for lots of men is that I am a potential rapist. Like, that's way more difficult to work from. That's a way more difficult position to work from than, who's this loser, right? I would love to live in an environment where women were just saying I was a loser. I would love to live in an environment where women were just thinking I'm just like some dumb idiot. That's the position I'd love to be in, because then I could just be a dumb idiot. And all the women would be like, well, what did I expect? Right? He's a dumb idiot, but he seems nice, right? But when you approach a woman and she starts with, who's this potential rapist, right? Then every action you do is put through this lens of, this guy is trying to rape me. And if she just concludes that this guy's trying to rape me, then everything you do just continues to funnel into that energy. And I'm not saying this to like demonize women or say like that this hasn't that the evidence isn't there. But I'm just saying, like, it makes it tough. Oh, and don't forget, you're supposed to have a license from the province to enjoy sex. What? What are you talking about, Nova Scotia? You're supposed to have a license from the province to enjoy sex? Is this happening in Nova Scotia with your new conservative government? You have a new conservative government, and are they legislating? They're making it so you have to have a license? Oh, you're talking about marriage license. You got to get married. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So everyone is watching porn with who knows what going on in it, but we're all expected to act like prudes. This is a great point, too, Onward. Like, there's a total, because of the coup, because of the takeover that's happened in the corporate environment, right, that the corporate environment has been sterilized, right, that I can only speak from the position of men, okay? Because I am a man and I have that, I have that equipment. Like, a woman is absolutely allowed to come into any workplace environment she wants wearing a skin-tight catsuit. She's absolutely permitted to do this, right? She can have clothing that's literally hugging her ass cheeks. Like, literally, like, as long as she's covered, right? The rule is covered from shoulder to knee. That's the rule in every corporate environment I've ever worked in. So any woman can come in wearing anything she likes, right, that goes from here down to her knee. She can wear a skin-tight catsuit that shows literally everything off. And men are supposed to just be like, this is totally fucking normal, right? And absolutely women know that they're doing this. Like, don't bullshit me. Like, don't fucking bullshit me. Like, if you're a hot woman and you're wearing this skin-tight outfit, you know that men are getting boners about it. Like, you know. Like, how can you not? If you don't, then you're fucking clueless. Like, obviously that's what's happening. But, like, if a man even mentions it, if a man even mentions it, they can get written up. I have seen people get fired for even mentioning it, right? And so this creates a incredible tension that exists built into the society, because everywhere you go, it's like this. The entire society says, look, you can't touch, you can't even talk about it, you can't even mention it. And if two dudes get together and they actually talk about it, well, one of those dudes is going to go fucking report. I've seen that happen too. Two men talk about it and one man goes and white knights and reports. And that guy, bye, right? At least formal reprimand, right? I've seen this happen. And so if everybody plays by the rules, and the rules are that incredibly beautiful people can walk around flaunting their beauty, right? And that's true on the male side as well. Like, if you're a hot dude, you can walk around being a hot dude, right? No one's allowed to say anything. No one's allowed to mention it. There's no outlet. There's no fucking pressure valve. And then you take this environment, this corporate environment, where everything is like, and you take all of those people and then you put them in like an environment where they're supposed to like actually interact and attempt to connect with one another to have like a sexual relationship. But one side of the conversation thinks the other side of the conversation are rapists, which is absolutely what's happening. Then and just because J.B. Peterson said it doesn't mean it's wrong. Even a broken clock is right, you know, twice a day or something, however that quote goes. And Peterson, like, once you accept who he is, right? I'll say this over and over again. Like, once you accept who Peterson is, which is a right-winger, right? Like, he's a right-wing conservative with conservative values. He's relatively astute. Like, he's not like somebody like Shapiro, right? Like, Ben Shapiro is a fascist and a little boy, right? Like, Peterson is I disagree with him on many points, but he's not like completely a total fucking neo-fascist loser, right? Like, I genuinely think that he's trying. That's the point that I've always made about Peterson. Like, someone like Shapiro or Chowderhead or any of those stupid right-winger idiots, they're not even trying, right? They're not even trying. That their goal is to own the libs. Like, that's their goal, right? I think Peterson is trying. I think Peterson is trying to make sense of what he's seeing, and he's attempting to do it. And he's struggling with his own bigotries, and he's struggling with his own internal shit. Absolutely. Like, the guy is absolutely a transphobe. Like, I don't think that you can make the case that he isn't. But there's lots of people in the society that are transphobe. Joe Rogan is a transphobe. Like, it's a tough thing to struggle with, right? Especially if you've grown up your entire life believing that, like, no, man marries woman and they go off and have their man-woman relationship. Like, the idea that there were gay people was tough for these guys, right? So, like, I don't dismiss Jordan Peterson because I admire the struggle. And he is who he is. He is who he is. And at this stage in the game, that's enough. It's enough that he is struggling, and he is struggling honestly. That's enough. And that separates him from the rest of the losers that he hangs out with. Ruth, that's way past boomer. LOL, we are generations away from that. It changed in 2000, but I also think the helicopter parenting changed and Danger Things started, yeah. I was out on my own all day, came home all night. Me too. Me too. I lived in like a rural town, right? And like, I literally could just like leave, right? I literally could just like go hang out. Like, I would go over to a friend's house. We'd be like, hey, I'm going to have a sleepover. Like, I'm 14. And we would just be like, okay, we're going to go. And like the parent in charge would just be like, okay, bye, see ya. And we would just go do whatever the fuck we wanted, wherever, right? Nobody knew where we were. We didn't have cell phones. Like, none of this shit. Like, the Danger Society, yeah. 80s and 90s were the best for women to make their own minds up. Yeah. I like that Kermit was right for once. It's such... Hitting Peterson with the Kermit thing is such low-hanging fruit. I think that the chaos orb in the sky where the dragon lives is it's very important for us to pay attention to the order demon that exists in the heart of all chaos spheres. It's such low-hanging fruit, but I love it none the same. We're safer than ever before, and people still act like you need to stay inside and watch Netflix. Well, and it's not like we've made a nice place. It's not like outside is good, right? Like, you go outside and it's kind of shitty most of the time. You got all these shitty cars. Like, most places are designed as thoroughfares for cars now, right? Yeah, that's just it. Like, I don't dislike JP as much as a lot of people, but I still take my life advice elsewhere. Yeah, well, because ultimately, like, what's Jordan Peterson peddling, right? It's The Secret. It's not different. It's like, you are the author of your own fate, like that kind of nonsense bullshit that's easily falsifiable. Like, you're obviously not. Like, one of my favorite things is whenever I see this a lot on Joe Rogan. Like, Joe Rogan really loves to talk about free will. He loves to talk about free will. He talks free will with basically everybody. And his position is that, yeah, I have free will. Of course I do. And it's so fucking stupid because I look at that and I go like, okay, what a great strategy when you're having a debate with someone who you disagree with is to just concede their point, right? Just completely concede their point and be upfront that that's what you're doing. Don't be a dick about it, right? Like, concede their point completely. Just go like, okay, you believe that free will exists, so I concede free will exists. Absolutely. So fucking what? So fucking what? You saying that you have free will is like saying that a grain of sand on the bottom of the ocean has free will. And as the ocean tides come and buffet that grain of sand, which has free will, around, right? And eventually puts it on the beach, right? And then some big-titted blonde comes and lands, and the grain of sand is on the big-titted blonde. And then the grain of sand goes, aha, it was my free will that landed me here. Please, let me dispense advice on how all grains of sand should live. Because certainly the ocean moving back and forth had nothing to do with it. Certainly the waves crashing up on the beach had nothing to do with it. Certainly the blonde coming by and landing in the sand had nothing to do with it. No, no, no. The thing that mattered the most within this equation was the fact that I have free will. So fucking what? Like, take your free will. Have it. And it's exactly as valuable as it is, which is not at all. Oh, no, yeah, exactly. I really think that Peterson doesn't understand Marxism very well, though. Yeah, no. He doesn't know Marxism at all. I don't think he won that debate with Slavoj Žižek. Same Matt Dillon with the God argument. You can see, because Jordan Peterson does blogs regularly, and he did a blog post the night before his debate with Slavoj Žižek, and he was saying that he was going to read the material. Like, the guy literally did a cram session the night before to have this debate. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's walking around telling other people that they need to read more, but he's never read anything about Marxism, about Lenin, about any of that. He's read the Communist Manifesto because he had to, because he was going into a debate with Slavoj Žižek about it. But there's like literally 100 years of writing since then that Marxism has been evolving and that lots of different people have taken lots of different perspectives of it. And for him to walk into an argument with anybody who's even claiming to be a Marxist, reading the material the night before, is embarrassing. It's fucking embarrassing. Like, there's a reason he looked dumb in that debate. Like, he didn't look good. And what was so funny is that Slavoj, like, Žižek, like, is literally sitting there in, like, sweatpants and a t-shirt, while Peterson is looking like he's got, like, a suit that's, like, glittering. And Slavoj, he didn't, like, attack Peterson. I think that Žižek saw pretty quickly that Peterson was pretty clueless, didn't really know what he was talking about, and so just decided to kind of softball this, and decided to kind of be nice to Peterson. Really. And even as he was kind of being nice to Peterson, like, made him look kind of dumb, right? Like, there was the one moment where he straight out asked Peterson, he was like, you don't seem to, like, when you say that a person should, clean up their room and, like, all that kind of stuff, and that's all well and good, but certainly you must accept that there are outside influences, right? And Peterson just didn't have a response, right? He just didn't have a response to this, like, obvious statement of, like, yeah, like, obviously there are outside influences, right? That not everything comes as a wellspring from the individual, right? That if the universe decides to crush you, it's going to crush you. Like, if you're the grain of sand on the bottom of the ocean and a wave comes by and sends you this way, you're going to go, right? There's nothing that's going to stop that from happening. And yet if you stand around as the grain of sand saying, I am where I am because I'm an individual and I'm the author of my own fate, well, you kind of look like a bit of a dummy, don't you? Like, and what's so odd to me about Peterson is that he stands around holding a Bible. Like, he literally says that he's like a defender of Judeo-Christian, Western Anglo values, that sort of thing. But, like, dude, read your own book. Like, read your own fucking book. Like, read the Bible, and you fucking tell me that the Bible is full of people being like, yes, you as an individual, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Do you genuinely think that the Bible is saying that? Or do you think the Bible is saying your God owns and controls you and can destroy you at his will? Obey and humble yourself to the forces of the universe. Which one of those two statements sounds more biblical to you? Like, genuinely. Just not even having read the Bible. That, oh yeah, God says that you as an individual are the most important thing. Or does God say, no, I could just put my finger on you and crush you like a little bug because I'm far more powerful than you are. And Peterson's walking around holding a Bible, basically preaching a message that is the antithesis of biblical learning, right? Like, it's the opposite of what the book says. I don't get the view of, well, we probably don't have free will, but we should pretend like we do because it doesn't matter. Seems solipsistic. I don't care. I think that's really what it comes down to for me. Like, free will or not. Like, oh, okay. We have free will. Oh, we don't have free will. Oh, okay. It just doesn't matter. I just don't see how it matters. Like, is it genuinely going to change the way that you look at things? Is it genuinely going to change what happens in the world? Is it genuinely going to change what happens, free will or not? Like, I just don't. The older I get and the more involved in that discussion I get, the more masturbatorial it seems. The more it is just such a fucking human game. It's just a fucking rabbit hole that you can go down and jerk off on and spend a lot of time masturbating intellectually, right? And like, who gives a fuck? Like, and that's why I say to these guys who are saying like, no, we have free will. I'm just like, okay, so, like, for all it matters, like, who gives a fuck? And honestly, I see it as a way to just inflate your own ego, right? That you're just sitting there being like, no, I have free will. I do. I'm the author of my own fate. I have control of what's going on around me, for sure. So that you can, like, take credit for all the good things that have happened in your life. And it also allows you to look at your neighbor and go like, what a loser, right? It all it does is inflate your ego, turn you into an arrogant jerk, right? That seems to be the only outcome I've ever seen. Like, I don't know what the benefit of it is. Like, if you want to get utilitarian about it, what's the benefit of it? What's the benefit of believing you have free will? Because near as I can tell, it just turns people into assholes, right? It just lets you look at the guy who's fallen on the street and go, well, he should have made better decisions, right? Because obviously free will is the most important determining factor. Clearly, the universe isn't powerful enough to crush someone if it wants to, right? Obviously, it's not. And like, what a sick insult! What a way to insult the universe! to just be like, my free will matters more than the power of the universe. Yeah, right, bud. Yeah, right. Literally, while you're living in a system that could starve you to death, could drop something on your head, and ultimately does kill you. Right? That's the best part. These guys walking around being like, I have free will, yeah, that really matters. Dude, the system kills you. Like, literally. Literally. The system kills you. Who gives a fuck about your stupid free will? It's just watching these guys masturbate. And eventually there comes a point where I'm like, dude, I just don't want to see these guys masturbating anymore. Just go away. Sure, you have free will. Off you go. In the end, it doesn't even matter. Linkin Park. Yeah, absolutely. Ugh. Abso-fucking-lutely. Hey, how do we get talking about JB? It's so easy to get me talking about fucking Peterson, dude. You just need to say Peterson, and I'm suddenly like, Peterson. Oh, Peterson. Is the entropic heat death of the universe enough free will for you? Yeah. I feel like we were talking about sex is what we were talking about, and then suddenly we started talking about JB. Weird connection to make. Talking about sex work and like how weird our society is in terms of how it views sex and all this kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden we're talking about Peterson. Ugh. Yeah, if you have free will, then live forever. Exactly. Like, that's a great response. Oh, sure, if you've got free will, just choose to live forever. Yeah, I make that joke all the time, where I'm like, I've decided I'm just going to stop aging. You know, just take my advice, everybody. Just stop aging. You know, I don't know. People keep making the decision to get old and die. But, like, I say it as a joke, but, like, that's how crazy these fucking neoliberals sound to me, right? That's how insane these guys sound to me. That they're, like, walking around being like, oh, yeah, I'll just stop aging. I'll just decide not to age. Well, just stop aging, then. Just, you know, these guys who are walking around saying, just get a job, or how are you going to pay for that? To me, they just sound literally like a dude who's saying, like, oh, I'm just going to stop aging. It's the same kind of, like, manic delusion. They're completely disconnected from reality, right? They're just walking around saying, oh, I'll just stop aging then. You know, I'll just stay this age forever, and that's fine. You got old and died? What a weird choice. Just don't get old. What a fucking dumb thing to do, right? But these guys, that's exactly what they sound like to me. Been stuck at 29 years old for a while now? Well, good for you, bud. 29's not a bad age. 29's not a bad age. You don't want to go through the midlife crisis, the 30s midlife crisis? That fucking, like... That's so funny, man. Everybody... When I was growing up, it was like 40 was the midlife crisis. 40 was like, oh, you're really going to get hit at 40. And almost every millennial I've ever talked to says that they've gone through something crazy like that at 30. That 30 is like when you start to feel your joints stiffen up a little bit. 30 is when other people start to regard you as an older person, right? There's a shift in how the society views you. There's a shift in how people look at you at 30, right? And you start to get that existential feeling of dread, of just like, what have I done with my life? What is life for? What am I doing here? What is any of this, right? And that's why, like, when you turn 30, that's why they start to promote you in the capitalist system. Because that's the only way they can keep you connected. Because if they don't promote you, right, if they promote, like, some young guy, right, you're more willing to leave, you're more willing to do... And yeah, millennials expect to live shorter lives. Of course we do. What do you think is going on with that vaping thing, right? One of my Patreons in the Discord keeps bringing up vaping. And the fact that there is this... that vaping is actually quite dangerous. That every time you vape, you're rolling your dice and saying, oh, well, I might get this, like, lung infection that comes along with it. And almost every millennial I've talked to about this is just like, oh, I hope so. Right? Like, literally, they're, like, smoking this vape, and I'm like, hey, man, like, that's way more dangerous than cigarettes. Like, you can get... like a serious thing that'll actually kill you. And the response I'm getting from most millennials is like, oh, thank God. Right? That, like, you talk to smokers and you're like, that'll take years off your life. And the response has become like, yeah, I know. That's the point. Right? Less time here, please. Thanks. Like, it's hard to argue with that, dude. It's hard to argue with that. Oh, you mean I have this little cigarette, and when I put it in my mouth and I light it up, not only does it get me high and make what I'm doing actually kind of bearable to live in this world, but it also means I get to live shorter? Perfect. That's win-win. Right? That's the millennial viewpoint. And it's like, tough. It's tough to fucking argue with that, man. It's tough to argue with that. I totally remember when I turned into a socialist, when billionaires were laughing on top of their buildings during the Occupy Wall Street. Yeah. Radicalized me totally. Yeah. Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Ma'am or sir was my first hint at 29. The Chapo guy, yeah, everybody needs to stop vaping. Like, vaping is literally, it's actually dangerous. Like, it's not dangerous the way that cigarettes are dangerous. Like, it's like, it will take a 20-year-old and it will make their lungs not work. Like, it is absolutely fucking dangerous. Like, and every time you vape, you're rolling your dice. You're making that happen. Yeah, they threw McDonald's applications onto the Occupy crowd. Yeah, absolutely. The Occupy movement, in my view, it's the Occupy movement's big failing was that it didn't surround the halls of power. That's what it was. That from the outset, what it was doing was symbolic. That they knew by taking over, like, the Wall Street places, like by taking to the streets in Zuccotti Park and by surrounding Wall Street and by turning it into Occupy Wall Street, they, from the outset, they conceded the possibility that there was actually going to be any political action that happened because of this. That was its crucial mistake. Like, if I were to critique, I don't like to critique other people's work, and I don't like to critique movements and things like this, because I, by and large, think that the Occupy movement was a positive. Like, the language of the 99%, the idea that the income inequality issue was really highlighted because of the Occupy movement, and a lot of it was Obama disillusionment, absolutely, but the kind of crucial linchpin. If I do critique movements and if I do critique people, I try to find the crucial linchpin. And if I'm not talking about the crucial linchpin, then I generally don't talk about it. And if I am talking about it and that's not the crucial linchpin, and then somebody points that out, then I stop talking about it and I change my tune. Anyway, that's like a lot of like caveat. Occupy should have surrounded the White House. Like, if that movement had have surrounded the White House, if those people had have been at the White House, shit would have happened, right? Like, oh, the president literally can't leave except by helicopter. Oh, the Congress is surrounded. These people can't get in and out except by helicopter. Like, shit would have happened. Like, people would have changed their tune, right? Like, that's how you get Nixon to sign in a whole bunch of leftist stuff. Environmental protections happened under Nixon. Like, and Nixon's a psychopath, right? Well, the reason that happened is because the White House was surrounded. We literally have Richard Nixon on record saying, what if they just come in here, right? Like, we got the tapes. We know that he was scared. What if they just come in there, right? What if those people just came into the White House, like the January 6th insurrectionists, right? What if they just took over? What if they just come in here, right? That's where you want politicians to be. And the Occupy Wall Street movement never did that. They were never a threat. They were in the wrong spot. They were doing, they conceded the possibility of reform from the outset. And that's the linchpin failure of the Occupy movement. That it could have been as politically influential and powerful as the Free Love movement in the United States. The Free Love movement was incredibly successful. They got legitimate reforms and legitimate things happened because of the Free Love movement in the United States. The Occupy movement, they did a lot of good in terms of radicalizing the populace. They did a lot of good in terms of shifting the culture, right? If it wasn't for the Occupy movement, you don't get Bernie Sanders, right? You don't get Elizabeth Warren without the Occupy Wall Street movement. Like, these cultural touchstones are important. But they could have gotten legitimate reform. They could have gotten, like, legitimate shit through. Take a look at what happened with the George Floyd protests, right? The George Floyd protests, in terms of numbers, had way less people. They had way less people than the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement had enormous numbers, right? And it was an enormous sustained protest, right? The George Floyd protest has way less numbers, but they've been way more effective. They've gotten way more done. Why? Because they're protesting in the right spot and they're going after the right people, right? They're surrounding buildings. They're taking over power structures, right? Like the Occupy movement never did that. Oh, I disagree with you. I think that the George Floyd protests, like, literally, like, you've got, and don't get me wrong, like, the United States political system is fucked. Like, it's completely fucked. Yeah, of course, no, but that was going to happen anyway, right? That was going to happen anyway. The culture shift that's happened, like, the fact that the Dems are bragging about funding the cops doesn't mean anything, right? Like, the amount of cops that have left the police forces because of the George Floyd protests is already a significant success. Like, the amount of retirement that's happened, the amount of recruitment is way down. The Biden administration has had to double the recruitment budget from the Trump administration because recruitment is way down. Because there's two things happening, right? And I do think both of these things are happening. That you have police officers who are joining the police forces because they genuinely do want to serve and protect their community. Like, I do think that there are police that are doing that, right? They're still on the side of the police in power, but they're there to do that. And they see the George Floyd protests and they see what's happening and they go, oh, I don't want to be a part of that, right? I don't want to be part of this obviously corrupt system. So you got those cops are leaving, right? And then you do have the other cops who are there to just beat the shit out of people, who want to be on the side of power, who are, you know, I want to kneel on some black guy's neck until he dies. That's what I'm here for, right? Well, you can't do that either, right? And now these guys, it's turning out like, oh, the George Floyd protesters and the rioters were actually fighting back, right? No, I'm here to beat up helpless citizens. I'm not here to fight. Like, I'm not here to have a fight. I'm here to bully. I'm here to beat people up. And so those guys are getting chased off too, because now it's turning into a fight, and they don't want to fight. And so they're losing on both fronts. They're losing the good people who actually want to do good because they realize that the system is not good. And they're losing the evil guys who are there to do the most harm because those guys are cowards and they don't want to fight. And so what's that leave you with? Well, for the most part, that leaves you with incompetent cowards, right? That leaves you with basically stupid morons who can't get a job anywhere else, but are too cowardly to actually use violence to enforce it against the populace. So you've got a police force that you want to be head crackers to go out and fight, but they're weak, and so they won't. And so I think that the George Floyd protests were a major success. Look at the mayor in New York elected, a black guy who was beaten up by cops and became one. But you also have situations where now in New York, domestic abuse cases are no longer being responded to by cops. They're sending social workers. And the result is extremely positive. So there are successes. There are successes. I just fear the cops will be reconstituted in a few years. I genuinely think the culture has shifted on it. That's the thing that I think I'm really driving towards, is that if it is reconstituted, well, of course, I mean, you're in the southern states, dude. Like, you're in fucking Georgia, right? Like, you got good old boys, is what you got, right? Just go down to the pub and wrangle up Jeb and the boys, right? We'll deputize them boys. Like, how long does it take somebody to become a cop in Georgia? How much schooling does it take? right? I bet that it's actually 0. I bet they don't actually have to go through schooling. I bet you that the sheriff can just roll through and deputize people in Georgia. Like, I don't mean to sound like dismissive or anything, but that is fucking, like, that's the truth. Like, yeah, the idea that like a person can become a cop in like a fucking in even 8 weeks, that like you can get 8 weeks of schooling and become a cop. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, no. Like, no. You don't get 8 weeks of schooling, then we put a gun on your hip, send you out. Like, what are you fucking talking about? It definitely has created a lot of discourse. Yeah, prisons are privatized. They need the convicts and the innocents. You're absolutely right about that, Ruth. That the prison industrial system. Yeah, I hate to tell you, most of this country ain't New York City. You're right about that, bud. You're right about that. For sure, you're right about that. No, and it's very complex. Like, the issue is very complex. Like, and I mean, and a lot of it is cultural. Like, a lot of it is cultural. And, like, the racism that exists throughout the southern states, like, it's persistent and it's present. And it's going to be a real uphill climb for Americans to get through. Because, like, and as Ruth says, right, the privatized prison system isn't helping. Before we close down, I do want to point out the Financial Times. China's Xi calls for wealth distribution and clamp down on high incomes. Tencent doubles social aid to $15 billion as scrutiny grows. The company on Wednesday announced it will give 50 billion won, 7.7 billion, to the government's wealth redistribution efforts, increasing incomes for the poor, improving medical assistance, promoting rural economic efficiency, subsidizing economic programs. That's already, so basically 92% of Westerners are saying we should raise taxes on the wealthy. Well, the Chinese are already doing that. They're already redistributing wealth. Like, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. No, Justin doesn't have a spine. Well, and it's because, it is because of how the structure works in China, right? That because they have a one-party system and everybody operates within that party, right? And there are elections, like the person that's being elected is being elected. But you're not being elected into a party so that these parties fight one another. Because when you have parties that are fighting one another, that creates major, like, creating wedges is a political strategy, right? It doesn't work. You can't actually do it in China, in the Chinese system, right? You can't create these wedge issues because at the end of the day, the people are electing their representative to the People's Council, right? And it's from here that these people all communicate, and they're all interested in how do we build the society up. So the reason why Xi is able to do this is because he has the full support of not only the council, but the people, right? And if the people stand up and say they want something, that happens. That the structure of the Chinese economy and the structure of the Chinese government is actually bubble up, right? We have this idea of trickle down in our society, which is why everything's collapsing, because it doesn't actually work. Whereas the Chinese economy is bubble up. That everything is cycle it into the lowest sections of the society, and it bubbles up. And if you get these big piles of bubble up, well, then you just take them away, right? No, Xi Jinping is well, and all the Chinese leaders, if you ask me, all of the Chinese communist leaders are very impressive in their own right. And you can debate and you can have conversation about this, that, and the other thing and all that. But at the end of the day, like, when you remember that they're just people attempting to be people and to organize people, especially 1.6 billion people, it's very impressive what they're doing. Yeah, more like the billionaire P is trickling down. Yeah, a-holes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And like, And these sorts of things are going to get more obvious, dude. Like China, like as we collapse, China is only going to continue growing, right? And it's not allowing the billionaire class to take hold, and it's not allowing the corporate coup to occur. That power is being maintained in the Chinese Communist Party. That it's the People's Party that actually runs the place, and you're seeing it over and over and over and over and over again. That like, if billionaires do crimes, they are executed. Like, that fact alone. Like, you can stand up and be like, oh, it's authoritarian, and the death penalty is so all this kind of stuff. But the reality is like, oh, a billionaire got punished for something, right? In China, if you do crimes as a billionaire, you are punished. And you can disagree with how the punishment is dealt out and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't cry too much for billionaires, honestly. Like, I don't cry too much for them. But like, the fact that they're getting punished at all should tell you something. Like, what's happening in China? Yeah, good night to you, Ruth. And I think with that, you guys... Oh, man. Good stream. Good stream. I bid you a farewell, exactly all that. Just remember, guys, you are divine beings, standing in divine energy. Don't let these guys fucking gaslight you. Good luck. We're gonna need it.